Welcome to another session on internal security. So, in the last class, we had started with Northeast insurgency. We had covered insurgency in Nagaland and all the insurgencies in Assam. Now, let's continue. We have few more states, that is Manipur, Mizoram, and Tripura. Let's complete these topics and let's give a conclusion as well to the chapter and look at some previous questions that have appeared in the exams. So let's start with insurgency in Manipur. So this topic again becomes very, very important for the exam because of all the unfortunate events that have happened in the last few months. Manipur's insurgency and the ethnic violence was actually a slightly old topic. The large-scale violence in Manipur, accompanied with insurgent violence, it was seen between 1960s to 1990s. Those 30 years were extremely violent in Manipur. But in the last 20 to 30 years, violence had declined. Manipur had become pretty much stable. But this year has been disastrous for Manipur. Starting from May 2023 till now, large-scale violence has broke out between the major ethnic groups, causing a lot of devastation in Manipur. So it becomes important to understand what is the root cause of this violence. Why did insurgency start in Manipur? How is it connected to the ethnic violence that happened recently? That is something we should understand in detail. So let's begin with the brief history of Manipur. Manipur was a princely state. It was a independent kingdom even under the British rule, and it was ruled by the Meiteis. The Meiteis are an ethnic community primarily found in the Imphal Valley of Manipur. All right? Even today, the Meiteis are inhabiting the Imphal Valley primarily, and they are the majority community. Majority of the population of the state is made up of the Meitei community, and most of the Meiteis are Hindus. All right? There are few Meiteis who are Christians and Muslims as well, but that's a very small number. But most of the Meiteis are Hindus inhabiting the Imphal Valley region of Manipur. So this princely state during British rule was given autonomy by the British. As I told you yesterday, when we started with Northeast insurgency, the British were very smart. They realized that they couldn't control all these ethnic groups and tribal communities. So what they did was they got hold of the resources. They got access to the forests and the resources of Northeast India while allowing all these communities and kingdoms to have their autonomy. So the British had given autonomy to the Meitei kingdom, the Manipuri kingdom, without ever annexing it fully into British India. So as a result, the Meitei rulers, they always had a sense of autonomy. They always felt that the princely state was autonomous and independent. And when India was granted independence, and when all these areas were being merged with India, there was a resentment that rose amongst the Meiteis, amongst the ruling class, right? In the princely state, there was a resentment against joining India because they believed that they will lose their autonomy, they lose their independence. Even though they were under the British rule itself, the autonomy which had been granted to them made them believe that they had a sense of autonomy, a sense of independence. So when Manipur was merged with India in 1949, it completed the merger, right? A few years after independence, it merged with India. So then the princely state held a sense of resentment with regard to its loss of perceived independence and autonomy. But however, this was not the root cause for insurgency in Manipur. This had only created some resentment amongst the Meiteis, amongst the majority dominant class. There was a sense of hesitation about joining India because they felt they had no cultural connection, no connect as such with the rest of India. They felt they were a distinct community and the kingdom always had its independence, even in medieval times. So they wanted to retain that independence, and when it was merged with India, in a way they felt it was a forceful merger, right? But however, this did not contribute to the insurgent movement. There was a different issue altogether which triggered the insurgency. But definitely this played a role. It did have a impact because the resentment that Meiteis held would play out later in the later years when insurgency started in Manipur. All right. Initially, Manipur was not a full-fledged state. It was given the status of a union territory. In 1972, it was elevated to a state. It was granted full statehood in 1972. Now, in 1960s, a major divide came up in Manipur between the majority and minority ethnic groups. Between the majority and minority ethnic groups, a very serious division came up, which was related to the fight over land, resources, and cultural identity. Between the majority minority ethnic groups, right, clashes broke out, differences came up with regard to fight over land, fight for resources, and for protection of their respective cultural identities. So who are the minorities then? If Meiteis are in majority, it's largely if Meitei Hindus are in majority, then who are in minority? If you just look at the ethnic groups, if you ignore the communal angle, the religious angle, if you leave that out, right, Meiteis are in majority. The primary minorities here are the Kuki and the Mizo, and as well as the Nagas. You find few Mizos as well in Manipur from neighboring Mizoram, but Kukis and Nagas, they are found in the hill areas of Manipur, in the hill regions that surrounds the Imphal Valley. That is where you primarily find the Kukis and Nagas. In fact, many experts, they refer to Manipur as a cricket stadium or a football stadium. That is how the geography of the state is. Just like in a stadium, you have a center field and the stands rise around the center field. Similarly, in Manipur, you have the Imphal Valley in the center, and around it, you have the hill areas. The hills rise around the Imphal Valley. So, in the hill areas is where you find the Kukis, Nagas, and even the Mizos, but Meiteis are primarily in the Imphal Valley. Now, Kukis are primarily Christians, right? So are the Nagas, even so are the Mizos. Whereas, as I told you, primarily Meiteis were Hindus. But this conflict that would break out between different communities would largely be an ethnic conflict more than a religious conflict. The religious angle has little role to play. Of course, it becomes one of the factors, but that's not the primary factor. So this is more of an ethnic clash that was witnessed in Manipur, as it's a multi-ethnic state. So what were the exact issues based on which the conflict and clashes broke out? See, the Meiteis, who are always the dominant influential class, who are the dominant influential community, they felt that they lost out by joining India. They felt that the government was discriminating against them, whereas it was favoring the minorities. They started perceiving this, right? They started feeling this and believing that Kukis and Nagas, who are minorities in the hill areas, they were getting many benefits. They were getting many government benefits, whereas the same was being denied to the Meiteis. So this became the primary trigger. Some government policies which would provide some benefits to Kukis and the Nagas was opposed by the Meitei community, as they felt they weren't getting any privileges under the Indian state. So what could be these benefits? What kind of benefits were being extended? See, the Nagas and Kukis, who are in minority in the hill areas, they are backward communities. Because of their smaller numbers, and as they inhabit the hill region, you might have heard of Churchandpur district, right, and other hill places in Manipur. That is where you find the Kukis and Nagas are also on the other side. So in the hill areas, there is no development, there is a lack of connectivity, right? So economic growth is compromised. So in general, these hill areas were considered as backward areas, and the Nagas and Kukis were seen to be vulnerable and at a disadvantage. So India gave them the tag of scheduled tribes. They were recognized as STs. They were officially given the ST recognition, as a result of which they would enjoy several privileges which would protect their land, their resources, and their identity. Is that clear? Nagas and Kukis in Manipur, they got the ST status because of their smaller numbers. They were in minority and they belonged to a remote backward area, the hill areas. So to provide for the development of these communities and to protect these communities, ST status was given, which would give complete protection to their land. The land in the hill areas was designated as tribal land, which means non-tribals like Metis cannot purchase this land. They cannot purchase land in the hill areas. The land here, the forest areas, became protected under the tribal status. It became designated as tribal land belonging to the Kukis and on the other side to the Nagas. So Metis resented this because Metis did not get the ST status. As they are the majority community, they are in larger numbers. They already own a lot of resources, and most of them are connected with the then princely state. So they are more affluent, more influential as well. So these Metis were not seen as backward, and ST status was not granted to them. So this would prevent the Metis from purchasing any land from the tribal belt, from the hill areas. Whereas the Kukis and Nagas could come down to Imphal Valley and they could purchase Methi land. Since Methi land in Imphal Valley was not protected, anyone, not just Kukis, any outsider could come and purchase the land from Methis in Imphal Valley. So this, the Methis believed, was a threat to their land and their forest areas. Understood? So this is obviously connected to resources as well, the forest resources. So Methis felt that their land and resources were under threat as outsiders could come and purchase their land, whereas the tribal communities, the hill tribes, they got protection under ST status and their land was protected as tribal land. So this became a primary root cause for tensions between the two sides. Is that clear? And because of ST status, Nagas and Kukis will also get reservation. They'll get reservation in education, in government jobs, etc. Right? They will also access several government welfare schemes, government subsidies which are given to ST communities, and that would benefit the Nagas and Kukis. So Metis felt they lost out by joining India. The Metis felt that they were betrayed. Their interests, their concerns were not being taken care of in the Indian state, whereas Nagas and Kukis were being given all the privileges because of the ST status. So Metis also started their demand for ST status, but this was not met. Even they started demanding ST status, but it wasn't met because they were the majority community and they were affluent as well, according to most of the studies. So this is what became the root cause for tensions between Metis on one side and the Nagas on the other side. Metis on one side and the Kukis on the other side. Is that clear? So this triggered clashes between the communities. The fight for land, resources, government privileges, and protection of their cultural identity is what triggered clashes which turned violent between these groups, between these ethnic groups. And given that the region was prone to insurgency, the Naga insurgency had started in neighboring Nagaland. There was already a availability of arms. These groups, they knew they could get some support from either Myanmar or in then East Pakistan, right? So these violent clashes triggered these groups and some of the radical extremists on both the sides. They established their own armed insurgent outfits. Now, don't forget, the Nagas already had their insurgency going on. The Naga National Council, NNC, was already waging an insurgent war, seeking to unite all the Naga areas to form Naga Lim or Greater Nagaland. So Meiteis saw the Nagas as a threat to the very integrity of their state. Meiteis feared that Manipur would be broken apart if Nagas achieved their goal. The Naga insurgents, their goal was to liberate all Naga areas, not just in Nagaland, but also in Arunachal Pradesh, in Assam, in Manipur and Mizoram, and in Myanmar. Right? We studied this yesterday. Their goal was to create Greater Nagaland or Nagalim. So if the Naga hill areas were broken apart by the Naga insurgents, then Manipur's state integrity will be compromised. So Meiteis feared losing a part of their state to the Naga insurgents. And since Nagas were having the support of the Naga insurgent groups like NNC and later NSCN, after NSCN was formed, it would also give armed support to the Nagas in Manipur. So this led the Meiteis to feel threatened. They felt the need to have their own armed insurgent outfit to fight against these groups and to protect its own interests. Whereas the hill tribes, on the other hand, Nagas and Kukis, they both felt threatened by what the Meiteis were doing, by their demands and the violence that they were already taking up. So Kukis also formed their own insurgency, claiming to form a Kuki land. The Kuki community, right? They also started their own armed insurgent movement, seeking to separate the Kuki areas in Manipur and Mizoram and unite that with parts of Myanmar to form their own country called Kuki land. It was these divisions and ethnic differences that triggered the violent armed movement in Manipur. It is indeed a complex issue. It's a social issue essentially. The usage of violence from both the sides and the failure of the governments to handle it is what allowed the situation to deteriorate. And very quickly, Manipur saw a major rise in insurgency. By 1960s, the insurgency had started, which would escalate throughout 1970s, 1980s, lasting all the way till 1990s. So the groups would target each other. The Meiteis, through their insurgent outfits, would attack Kukis and Nagas. Kukis who had formed their Kuki outfits, the Kuki land outfits, would target the Meiteis. Naga outfits would give them support and they would also target the Meiteis. So this became an inter-ethnic violence that destabilized Manipur. Is that clear? So the violence escalated in Manipur, causing major destabilization. And as a result, the government of India imposed AFSPA. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act was brought in, and the Indian Army and Assam Rifles were deployed to counter these insurgents. All these groups were a threat. It's not just one outfit. It's not just Meiteis, it's not just Kukis, not just Nagas. All of them were an equal threat to India because they all started these separatist movements and they were not only targeting the Indian state, right? And the state government, they were targeting these different ethnic groups as well. So under AFSPA, large-scale counterinsurgency operations commenced in Manipur in 1960s, which would continue for several decades, and allegedly the imposition of AFSPA and these counterinsurgency operations of the Indian forces has led to very serious human rights violations. There are very serious allegations that large-scale human rights violations have been committed in Manipur. Is that clear? So there is a lot of opposition against AFSPA as well. So this is what the situation was in Manipur during the peak insurgent period. All right, this situation continued for many more years until 1990s. It was only after that the ethnic violence declined and Manipur became relatively stable. All right. So the clashes that have happened here has been primarily a struggle for land, resources, and identity. One group being threatened by the other, one group taking up armed violence against the other. Right. This is what triggered a wave, a cyclical, vicious wave of violence, where all the communities have committed a lot of atrocities. And under AFSPA, there are very serious allegations that Indian forces as well have committed a lot of human rights violations. Is that clear? Now, this movement gradually declined because, on one hand, we had effectively tackled the insurgents. All right, the support that these groups had, the easy funds and weapons and drugs that they were procuring from across the border in Myanmar, all of this was curbed quite effectively by 1990s. So that helped in curbing the movement and in reducing the scale of violence. And also, post 1990s, there was better development. There was greater focus from the government as well with regard to providing better governance, right? And many Manipuri youth, they moved out of the state to other parts of India to study and work. So gradually, these insurgent groups, they lost their support base, and slowly over a period of time, the violence had declined. So the major insurgent groups that operated here include the UNLF, United National Liberation Front, formed in 1964 by the majority Methi Hindus. All right. And the second insurgent group of Methis is the PLA, the People's Liberation Army of Manipur, which is again an outfit of the Methis. All right. So different Methi factions set up these two dangerous insurgent groups, which went on to commit major acts of violence. And hence, they're all proscribed as terrorist organizations. Understood? So, Methi community would be represented by these insurgents. They would act as the representatives of the whole community. And these extremists would commit a lot of violence and atrocities against others, including against the Indian state. And their goal was to separate Manipur from India. It was a separatist movement. They wanted to seek independence. All right. The Nagas got support from the Naga National Council initially, that is from 1960s to 70s, when NNC existed. They got the full support of NNC rebels from across the border. Then later, after 1980, the NSCN, especially the Isaac Muiwa faction, they would provide complete support to the Nagas in Manipur. So these Naga outfits would also carry out brutal violence in Manipur and also in the border areas of Manipur and Nagaland. All right. One practice by these Nagas was the blockade of Manipur to punish Manipur and the Metis, and also to put pressure on the government. The Naga insurgents along the border, the Nagaland Manipur border, they would block the key highway and impose a blockade. Especially NSCN IM has done this very frequently. It has done this even quite recently as well, as recently as 2015, 2016. Whenever the Nagas wanted to put pressure on the government of India, whenever they wanted to, make a point, or if they wanted to show support to Nagas in Manipur and threaten the Metis, what they would do was they would block the road. There is a critical national highway that links Manipur with rest of India. If you go back and see the map, you will notice that Nagaland is right above Manipur. It sits right above Manipur. This national highway passes from Assam, enters Nagaland, and then enters Manipur. This is the lifeline of Manipur. Most of the essential supplies to Manipur comes through this national highway from other parts of India. Now, the Naga insurgents, the NSCN IM especially, they would block this national highway at the border. These armed insurgents, they would block the road entirely, prevent the trucks from passing through. If they have to allow a vehicle, they would extract a ransom from them. If someone paid money, they would let them pass, or else they wouldn't allow the trucks to pass. They have even opened fire as well and attacked the trucks carrying goods and supplies to Manipur. So this Naga blockade became a major threat for Manipur. particularly to the Meiteis, this would have a huge economic impact. Due to this blockade, which would last many weeks, Manipur would get cut off from rest of India, as other roads are not preferred and they're not very easily accessible. It would lead to shortage of essential items like food, medicines, fuel. They would all run out of supply, leading to massive inflation, massive rise in prices. So as a result, Manipur would suffer, the people of Manipur would suffer, and especially the Meiteis, they felt targeted by the Nagas who were blocking the roads. So this was one angle to the insurgency and the ethnic conflict in Manipur. The other angle is basically between the Meiteis and the Kukis. So Kukis who enjoyed the ST status, they inhabited the hill areas, whereas Meiteis, they resented the ST status given to the Kukis. They would demand ST status for themselves for many, many years. As it wasn't met, it would lead to frequent violence between the communities, the armed groups of both the sides, the Kuki insurgents as well, right? Even the Kuki groups would be well armed, and they would easily procure arms from Myanmar, from across the border, all right? And they would lead this so-called separatist movement to liberate these areas, the Kuki areas, and form their own country that they would call as Kuki land. The Kukis could form a formidable insurgent group, even though they were in minority, mainly because they are related to ethnic groups in Myanmar. The Kukis are connected to the Chin community, the Chins, and also to the Zom or the Zomi community. The Chins and the Zom or Zomi, they are found across the border in Myanmar. And these groups are connected to each other. They share familial links with each other. These ethnic communities are, connected to each other. Same with Mizos of Mizoram. Mizos are also connected to the Chins of Myanmar. So these cross-border links have played a role in further instigating violence in Manipur. Mizos had their own insurgency going on through Mizo National Front. In neighboring Mizoram, parallel insurgent movement had broken out from 1960s itself. So few of the Mizos who are found in Manipur, they would get support from the Mizo outfit, the Mizo insurgent group called MNF, Mizo National Front. So since all these ethnic groups had their own armed outfits, engaging in violence, having access to advanced weapons, and finding shelter in neighboring Myanmar, all these outfits very quickly became notorious terror organizations committing brutal violence against each other and also targeting the Indian state and the Indian forces. That is the reason why AFSPA was brought in 1980. It was declared a disturbed area, and AFSPA was implemented to give special powers to the Indian forces to tackle the threat. So Indian Army and Assam Rifles, they did carry out effective counterinsurgency operations. But allegedly, these operations would lead to large-scale human rights violations. There have been many allegations that Indian forces have committed fake encounters. In fact, a case was filed to the Supreme Court of India challenging AFSPA and calling for accountability. And this organization, there was an NGO that represented the Manipur people, which had filed this petition at Supreme Court. It had collected evidence to show that thousands of people had been killed by Indian forces. Anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 fake encounters had happened, according to this social group. The Supreme Court looked into the case and passed some important observations. So as a result, Manipur saw complete destabilization that lasted all the way till 1990s. All right, the state was ravaged with violence and it stabilized only post 1995. So in a way, the last 30 years have been relatively peaceful, relatively stable, because the support base declined for these outfits. India also was effectively targeting the groups, right? We managed to improve border security. We managed to target the cross-border support as well, especially from Myanmar. So as a result, the support declined. Many youth from Manipur, they moved out as well. In the last 30 years, they found better opportunities in other parts of India. So gradually, the support declined for these groups and the violence also had come down. But given the threat, given the presence of these armed groups which are still active, AFSPA continued in Manipur. Even though violence had declined, AFSPA continued because India still felt that there is a threat, because these armed groups were still active. They hadn't surrendered, there was no peace accord. So at any time, these groups could revive. So AFSPA was continued by the government to deal with any security situation. The Metis, in the last few years, they have raised many demands to protect themselves and to uplift the community. All right, one demand they were raising was the demand for ILP, the inner line permit. All right, so you should know what is this. What is inner line permit? This was a demand raised by the Metis. They wanted inner line permit to be implemented, or ILP to be implemented in the Methi areas, that is in the Imphal Valley. Now let me tell you what is this ILP. All right. After this, we'll discuss the latest clashes, the 2023 incidents. See, ILP, as the name itself tells you, it's a permit system. It restricts access, that is entry. It also restricts land ownership, or I would say land purchase by outsiders. All right, in areas which are under ILP, inner line permit. Now, for example, let's say we go to a different country. Let's say we are Indians, we go to US, we go to study, or we go on a tourist holiday. Now, US will not allow you with unless and until you have a travel permit, which is a valid visa, right? So there is a permit system to move from one country to another, which we call the visa system, the visa immigration system. Quite similarly, within India, a permit system was implemented. If you have to enter certain areas, certain restricted tribal areas, you need to have this permit. Any outsider coming to ILP area, so if Indians were to enter these ILP areas where ILP is in place, you need this permit. You need to get the permit first, and only then you'll get access or entry into the restricted area. And outsiders cannot purchase land, they can't own land in ILP areas. This system is of British origin. All right, it was the British who had implemented the system through the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act. In the late 1800s, this law was enacted, the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act. If I'm not wrong, I think it was brought in 1873, if I'm not wrong. Kindly check this once. I think, as far as I remember, it's 1873. The Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation Act was brought in by the British to restrict access to outsiders to the tribal areas and the forest areas in northeast India. Is that clear? If any outsider from rest of the country, even if he is Indian, if he or she has to enter this area where ILP is in place, they need to get the permit from the British authorities. The British, they mainly introduced this system to protect their own economic interests. They said that the permit was for protecting the tribal communities, but that was just a lie, a farce. Their true interest was to protect their own economic interests, to ensure Indian traders and Indian producers from other parts of the country don't come to tribal areas to harvest the forest and tribal resources. So this permit system had been implemented by the British to protect colonial economic interests. Post-independence, we continued the system. Post 1947, the government of India continued ILP in some places like Nagaland, parts of Mizoram, and even Arunachal Pradesh. So in these states, inner line permit was implemented by the government of India. All right. This time, the purpose was not to protect economic interests. The government was implementing ILP mainly to protect tribal land and tribal resources in these states, to ensure that outsiders don't come and exploit tribal land and resources, and it would help the tribal communities to protect their identity as well. So all these states had ILP, Nagaland, then Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. But Manipur did not have the system. So that is why the Meiteis, they demanded ILP. As they weren't getting ST status, there was no protection to their land and resources, right? Whereas Kukis and Nagas had got ST status. They were recognized as hill tribes. So now the Meiteis realized that ST status may not be given. So they started demanding for inner line permit to be implemented in the Imphal Valley, so that the Meitei land can be protected from outsiders. It will restrict the entry of outsiders. Only those with the permit can enter, and outsiders cannot buy land and property in ILP areas. All right, so that is why the Meiteis kept demanding for inner line permit. They led many protests. They appealed to many political parties and governments to get ILP implemented in Manipur. Finally, they succeeded in these efforts. Just a few years ago, recently, ILP was implemented in Manipur in the Imphal Valley. ILP was approved. The state government took the necessary steps with support of the center, and inner line permit has been implemented in the Imphal area. So this, in a way, gives some protection at least to the Meiteis. All right, so for this, they were protesting, raising their demands many times. And sometimes these protests would turn violent as well. So after many years of demanding ILP, finally, inner line permit has been approved for Manipur, for the Meitei areas. Now, the latest clashes, what you saw in May 2023, is related to this. In fact, it's an extension of what had happened before. The clashes that you saw, that you read about, they are primarily between Meiteis and the Kukis. Nagas are not involved this time. In this year's clashes, Nagas have not been involved. It's only between the majority Meiteis and the minority Kukis. So what happened was, there was a commission that had been set up by the Ministry of Tribal Welfare. The Tribal Welfare Ministry had set up a commission a few years ago in 2013. This commission was asked to study whether the Meiteis deserve ST status. As Meiteis were demanding this from a long time, leading protests as well for ST status, the Ministry of Tribal Welfare had set up a commission, asking the commission to inquire the backwardness of the community, to check whether the community deserves scheduled tribe status. This commission, after conducting its inquiry, it had recommended ST status. All right, the commission felt that Meiteis are backward even though they are in majority, and to uplift the community, the commission recommended the implementation of ST status, giving ST status to the Meiteis. But however, the recommendation was not implemented by the government because of the controversy associated with it. Because of the sensitivity associated with this issue, the government did not implement the recommendation. It did not provide ST status. So recently, some Meitei groups, they had approached the High Court, the Manipur High Court, and they were demanding for ST status based on the recommendations of this commission. So the High Court passed an order in April 2023 calling upon the government to provide ST status to the Meiteis as recommended by the commission that was established by the Tribal Welfare Ministry. This is what triggered the fresh wave of violence and caused a tragedy in Manipur. The High Court It observed that the Meiteis are indeed backward. They have lost out on their development, on their resources. So the High Court intervened and directed the government, urged the government to act on it. And as early as possible, it asked the government to provide ST status to Meiteis. The moment this order came out, the Meiteis, they celebrated, right? They held a few rallies as well, celebrating the orders. And they were hoping ST status to be given as soon as possible. But immediately, as soon as these orders came from the High Court, it was opposed by the Kukis, the Kuki minorities in the hill areas, in the hill regions. They opposed the recognition of Meiteis as STs. All right, and to express their opposition, they conducted a massive protest in the first week of May. Right? They demanded that the government should not implement the orders of the court and the recommendations of the commission. And they demanded that ST status should not be provided at any cost, as Meiteis are already privileged. Right? As they come from the majority group, as they come from the royal princely state as well. Right? They're already affluent, privileged. So Kukis demanded that ST status should not be provided to Meiteis. So they led protests against the Meitei ST status. All right, they carried out a massive rally on 3rd May 2023. And these protests witnessed a counter protest by the Meitei groups. The Meiteis carried out counter protests to oppose the Kukis. And during these protests which happened, the protests by Kukis on one side against giving ST status, protests by the counter protest by the Meiteis asking for the ST status. These protests triggered violent clashes between the communities. The tensions had already built up over the years, and all of a sudden, right, the movement got triggered, where armed movements, armed groups from both the sides, they started targeting the members of the other community. In Imphal, for example, right, there will be some Kukis who are settled, who have moved from hill areas and settled in Imphal area. Meitei insurgents and Meitei armed groups carried out targeted violence against the Kukis in Imphal. They hunted Meiteis, they hunted the Kukis house to house, right? They marked out which places, which houses specifically are Kuki houses, Kuki homes, and attacked them, burned down the homes, killed many people, committed brutal rapes and molestations as well. This violence, which got triggered, saw a counter reaction by the Kukis. The Kuki armed groups are no less. They retaliated, conducted similar attacks against Meiteis who are residing in the hill areas. Some Meiteis, they have moved from Imphal and settled in hill areas over the years. So Kukis mainly targeted the Meitei community, and the Meiteis targeted the Kuki community. So this began the cycle of violence. The uncontrollable cycle of violence broke out, causing large-scale destabilization of Manipur. Is that clear? Meiteis would attack the Kukis, especially the Kuki Zom or Zomi community. All right. And the Kuki insurgents from the hill areas also get support in Myanmar, who have the backing of the Zom or Zomi and the Chin community. They also launched their counterattacks against the Meiteis. So this is what created the cycle of violence. Essentially, whatever problems you have seen here, it's a direct result of the deep-rooted ethnic divide between all these communities. Understood? So on one hand, the Meiteis would target Kukis in the Kuki Zom community. Kuki insurgents, the armed groups of Kukis, would target the Meiteis. This violence went completely out of control. And from May till now, in these 4 to 5 months, 180 to 200 people have been killed. Women in particular have been targeted. They have been raped, molested by the other community, by the insurgent armed groups of the other community. So the state government has been heavily criticized along with the government of India for failing to contain the crisis. There are allegations that the state government apparently favored the Meiteis. Right? There's a strong allegation that state government headed by Chief Minister Biren Singh was acting on behalf of the Meiteis who are in majority. Right? The government of India also has been blamed for not being able to contain the security situation despite deploying several troops and using intelligence agencies to curb the threats. The government has deployed thousands of troops, additional troops, stepped up intelligence operations as well. But still, the government has been criticized. The Ministry of Home Affairs has been heavily criticized for not acting decisively against the armed insurgents. In fact, for several weeks, internet was shut down completely across Manipur. It cut off Manipur from rest of India with regard to telecom internet connectivity. The authorities, they were trying to prevent the spread of fake news, propaganda, or rumors, which could further instigate more violence. So internet was shut down for many, many weeks. For more than 2-3 months, internet was completely shut. And it was only after the ban was lifted, right? Only then horrific videos came out. Once the internet ban was lifted and once internet was restored, horrific videos came out showing the killings, the brutal rapes and molestations. Right? And these visuals caused a massive outrage across India. Across India, in the media and amongst the public, a lot of outrage was expressed against the abuses, the violations that had been carried out in Manipur. Again, it's not about which community is to be blamed, right? Such conflicts don't happen with just one party. It takes two to you know, it takes two to trigger such conflicts. So there are several mistakes that have happened from both the sides, mistakes from the government, and as a result, the situation in Manipur has become very volatile, very vulnerable. So there is a fear that insurgency could return because of the latest ethnic violence. There is a fear in Manipur that insurgency might come back as it was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Right? So these are some genuine concerns that exist. Now, even after several months of all the violence and atrocities, justice has not been provided to several victims. In many cases, the culprits have not been arrested who committed targeted attacks against the other community. Right? Even though the videos went viral, many of the elements who were involved in committing rapes and killings, they have not been detained, not arrested, and they have not been delivered punishment. So this again brings criticism against the government that the government has not been effective in enforcing the law. Now there is a connection to Myanmar as well in all these developments. The Kuki Zone community especially, they have a close link with Myanmar, that is across the border. All right. Now, since the political crisis began in Myanmar in 2021, right, starting from 2021, a large-scale political crisis has come up where the Myanmar army, the military junta, has captured power again in Manipur. Right? So, as the military junta has targeted minority groups, it has targeted minority groups and insurgents. The Chins and even the Zomi community from Myanmar, they have fled across the border into India. They have entered Manipur and also Mizoram in large numbers, seeking asylum in India. In order to save themselves from the military dictatorship in Myanmar, where civilians and protesters are being targeted, right? Myanmar's army is targeting such minority groups which are leading insurgent wars and rebellions against the state. So to escape the persecution and the targeted violence in Myanmar, the Chins and Zomi community, they moved to India and sought asylum in Manipur and Mizoram as they are connected with each other, as they share these familial links with each other. The government of India, however, had directed not to accept the refugees. Government of India had said no to refugees. It had directed the state government of Manipur and Mizoram to not accept the refugees. But states, they've gone ahead on their own. They've ignored the orders of the government of India and they have raised funds and support to support the Chin and Zomi refugees who have come in. All right, in several camps, in several locations, the Chins and the Zomis have been accommodated primarily by the Kukis. Is that clear? So in Manipur and Mizoram, the local support that exists for these tribal ethnic groups from across the border, right, it has allowed them to accept the population that's coming in, the refugees that's crossing over. And the government orders have been ignored. The central government orders have been ignored to not accept refugees. And yet they have been accommodated in some of the camps that have come up in the hill region. So the Kukis are the ones who are primarily accepting the Chins and the Zoms. All right. And the allegation by the state government and even by the Metis is that there is an allegation by them, by the other side, that Kukis who have brought in the Chins and Zomis and accepted them, they are clearing forest land in the hills. Basically, they are carrying out deforestation on a large scale. All right. Not just to accommodate the refugees, but also allegedly to produce drugs. This is the allegation, a serious allegation raised by the Manipur state government and the Metis. They've alleged that the Kukis who have taken in the Chins and Zomi refugees, they have settled them in the hill areas, cleared some forest land, carrying out deforestation, and occupied the hill forest land, the tribal forest land, to carry out drug production so that they can smuggle the drugs in the region. As it is very close to the Golden Triangle in Myanmar, right? Drug production will thrive in the region. So the accusation from the state government and Metis is that Kukis are a threat. Kukis are a threat to Metis. They're a threat to Manipur itself. And they're working with cross-border insurgents from Myanmar, apparently to occupy land and to destroy the forests and to cultivate drugs, to cultivate opium. These allegations are rejected by the Kuki Zom community. They have rejected this argument of the state government and the Metis. They have clearly said they've never tried cultivating drugs. They're not clearing forest land just to bring in refugees. Right? Refugees have been settled largely on humanitarian grounds. As they're escaping violence in Myanmar, they've just been sheltered by these communities. That's what they are saying. Right? But it was these differences primarily. The differences over ST status, the privileges for both sides, right? The privileges they enjoy, and finally, the links across the border and the extension of these privileged provisions to the other community. This is what has become the root cause that triggered the wave of violence, causing large-scale deaths and injuries. So following the breakout of the violence, the government has deployed additional forces. It has virtually put the state on a lockdown, and it has started stepping up the operations against these outfits. Now, this is where things stand, right? We need to closely monitor what will happen going forward. In every possibility, insurgency might revive. The Methi insurgent groups like UNLF and PLA, they might revive their operations, or some new Methi insurgent groups might be set up. Even the Kukis as well, right? The Kuki Zom, Kuki Chin community might also go back to their armed struggle. They can easily access drugs and weapons from across the border, and they might also revive their insurgent movement for Kuki land. So there is a risk that this ethnic violence might spill over, which could lead to the revival of insurgency in Manipur. All right. So going forward, the government has to ensure one, the region is stable. These clashes should be prevented, avoided at any cost. Security forces have a very important job. The army and Assam Rifles, especially, they need to ensure that both communities are protected. Metis can't be targeting Kukis. Kukis can't be targeting Metis. This has to stop. Many innocents have died already. They have paid the price. This brutal atrocity has to stop immediately. And the government also has to be neutral, be it central government or state government. They have to be neutral on ethnic and religious lines. They should not be seen to be backing or supporting one group against the other. Right? So these are the major concerns we have. It is early to say what will happen, right? It's too early to conclude. Let's see. Let's see the developments that come up. Current affairs will give us that information. So that's why I urge you to read newspapers carefully. There are many such trending topics. These topics keep building up over a period of time. So now that you know the background of what had happened in the past and what has happened this year, you can easily connect those events with current affairs, and please add those points from current affairs into the notes so you know thoroughly as to what exactly is happening in Manipur. What is the current situation in Manipur? Is that clear? So this completes my discussion on Manipur's insurgency and ethnic violence. If you have any doubts, please let me know. I'll take up questions on Manipur, and then we'll start with the next two topics. As I told you yesterday, these other states are very small topics, right? The issues associated with them is very easy to understand. We can go through them quickly, understand the insurgent movements and the current status very quickly. Naveen is asking, recently the issue has arisen in Manipur, so what precautions have been undertaken by government of Manipur and the central government? So the central and the state government, as I told you, they've increased the troop presence, right? Hundreds of troops were brought in, hundreds of battalions of troops were brought in from the Assam Rifles. The Manipur police have stepped up their deployment, right? Even Indian Army is on alert, and the troop presence has been increased to counter the violence. Then internet was shut down. The state was virtually cut off. The Even the roads were blocked to ensure that no one goes out and comes in, right? Apart from that, the government has opened a dialogue. The central government through the state, it is talking to some communities. It's talking to the Methi groups and Methi leaders. It is talking to the Kuki Zone community and the leaders as well to try and work out a negotiation, a settlement, so that some stability and peace can be brought back to Manipur. Even now, even today, the situation is very volatile. Don't think that the situation has become better. Even now, there are attacks happening. Just recently, in this month itself, there have been again brutal incidents where these armed groups have targeted each other. So, as of now, the situation continues, but the government is reaching out to try and talk to these groups along with increasing the security presence. So, those are the measures taken by the government. And also, in cases where killings and rapes have happened, right? Cases have been registered, investigations are happening. Teams of NIA, CBI have been deployed to the center to investigate these cases. Manipur police is patrolling everywhere along with Assam Rifles to ensure that Kukis and Metis are separated. They don't come into contact with each other. The hill areas have been blockaded and protected, and the Imphal area, the valley area, also has been protected. And whoever were present, the outsiders, they've all been removed. Like if Kukis were there in Imphal, they've all been taken out and they're under state protection. Similarly, if Metis were there in the hill areas where Kukis could target them, those Methi families have been relocated, so they are not attacked by the insurgents and the armed groups. So these are the various measures that have been taken, but it's not enough because government should have foreseen this coming. There should have been better intelligence gathering, right? Ideally, we should have preempted these attacks that happened, and at least now we should ensure that justice is done, right? Atrocities have happened on both the sides, so justice has to be done. The perpetrators have to be held guilty and punished. Very, very brutal killings have happened, right? Women especially have suffered. So justice has to be delivered by the government. Those guilty, they should be given the strictest punishment. That is one way of healing the wounds that are left behind by such conflicts. Atharv is asking, Manipur High Court gave the SC status to Meiteis, but matter went to Supreme Court. Then Supreme Court said SC status can be given only by the president. How High Court intervened? See, High Court did not give SC status. High Court will not have the powers to give SC status. It asked the government. It ordered the government to work on it. It asked the state government of Manipur to work on the proposal as recommended by the commission, the Tribal Affairs Ministry Commission, which had recommended SC status in 2013, right? That report was brought back by the High Court. And then it asked the state government to look into it and act on it with the central government to provide SC status as soon as possible. So now that it became clear that a path was opening up for giving SC status to Meiteis, that is when the Kukis reacted. They protested. They carried out a protest, which was countered by the Meiteis, that led to these clashes, these violent clashes. Pratyaksh is asking, today Kukis can buy land in Imphal or not? They can. As I told you, Imphal area is not protected completely. Kukis can buy land in Imphal. Vivek is asking, difference between Kuki and Kuki Zome. The Kukis, just the Kukis, they are from India. They are in India. They are on the hillside of Manipur and Mizoram. Kuki Zome are the ones who are connected to the Zomi community in Myanmar. All right, and there are cross-cultural marriages which happen as well. Kukis from India, they marry into Zomi families from Myanmar. So those families are called the Kuki Zome or Kuki Zome community. Whereas in India, on the Indian side in Manipur and Mizoram, you just call them Kukis. Gagan is asking, when Government of India said no to refugees, why Kukis are allowing refugees for asylum? That's because Kukis are connected to the refugees who are coming in. They are family to them, right? They are being slaughtered in Myanmar. Chins and Zome community, they are being slaughtered in Myanmar by the army, right? Myanmar's army is using massive force, conducting airstrikes against these ethnic groups. So they have run away to save their lives. So since these communities are connected to them, even Mizos in Mizoram are connected with the Chins. So Kukis are connected with Chins and Zomi community. So those who are coming in, they are family to them. They are relatives to them. So they are accommodating them despite Government of India saying no to refugees. Since the border is porous, right? Refugees can cross over. And also please understand, it's a humanitarian situation. They are not illegal migrants. They are refugees coming here to save themselves, to protect their lives as they are being targeted in Myanmar. So that is why the crisis in Myanmar has directly hit India. It has directly affected India, and it has played a role in the latest ethnic violence that we have seen in Manipur. All right. Now let's move on to the next topic. Let's look at Mizoram. Let's understand Mizo insurgency. Mizoram was a district in Assam. It was just one district in the large state of Assam. All right, when the states were reorganized from 1950s to 1980s, during these 3 decades, Mizo area, which is the state of Mizoram today, it was just one district in the large state of Assam. It was granted statehood only in 1987 to bring the insurgency to an end. That is when Mizo area was granted statehood. All right. So let's see what happened here in the Mizo district. There's a very interesting development. It's a tragic development which contributed to the rise of Mizo insurgency. So in Mizo district, you find the native ethnic tribal community called the Mizos. It's home to the Mizo community. So the Mizos felt that in Assam, they were being discriminated by the Assamese. Remember, I told you yesterday, in the large state of Assam, Assamese have been dominant. Even today, Assamese are the dominant community in Assam. Just like Bodos, Karbi Anglongs, Dimasas have felt neglected and discriminated under the Assamese. Similarly, the Mizos felt left out. See, initially when Mizo area merged with India, there was hesitation here as well. Because the Mizos, they saw themselves as culturally distinct from India. They never saw a connect with India. Even they had opposed any integration with India. But eventually, these areas were brought under the Indian Union. So there was already a sense of resentment against the Indian government. Along with that, Mizo area was just made one district in the large state of Assam, where they felt that they were being discriminated and left out with regard to development by the Assamese. So this created even more resentment amongst the Mizos. The lack of development, the lack of welfare, poor governance by the state government was one root cause which triggered a lot of resentment amongst the Mizos. Then came a development, right? It was a natural disaster kind. It was a famine. A massive famine started in 1959 that caused large scale hunger in the Mizo areas that killed many people. Several Mizos died due to hunger and malnutrition. This famine, right, that started, it was triggered by the rodent infestation that hit the Mizo area. There was a massive rodent infestation because of the monsoon season. All right, because of the monsoon season, which is a natural process of bamboo flowering. These bamboos, which are found widely in Northeast India, they flower once in a cycle of 48 years. They flower simultaneously. So when all the bamboos have flowered, all the seeds will drop to the ground. So suddenly there is a wide availability of food. There is a large availability of food available on the ground. All the seeds will be falling down. So the rats and the rodents, they'll start eating them. Now that they have easy supply of food, which will last them many months, the rodent population will explode. All right? The rodent population explodes, and these rodents, they will consume all the seeds that have fallen during the autumn season, during the flowering season. But once they exhaust the seeds, right, eventually after a few months, those seeds will be completely consumed. Then these rats and rodents, which are now in very large numbers, they will not have enough food available. They'll not have easy access to food anymore. So what they do, they will target the agricultural crops. They will target the warehouses, the granaries, where all the food grains are stored, where the food material is stored. So because of this massive rodent rat infestation, crops were destroyed in the Mizo area, and granaries and warehouses and even kitchens in the house, right? Everything was raided by the rats and rodents, causing a massive crisis. It triggered collapse of agriculture, causing a famine, leading to critical shortage of food for the Mizos. So it was a disaster that happened. But the Mizos felt that no one came to their help, neither the Indian government nor the Assamese government. The Mizos felt they were left on their own. They were neglected. Enough assistance was not given. Enough food supplies were not provided. Because the Mizo area was a far away, remote area back then. It was largely ignored and neglected. So the Mizos organized themselves into the Mizo Union, and they took care of their own well-being. The Mizo Union acted like a political NGO, right? It took the leadership role and started arranging food supplies to help out the people and save as many lives as possible. So Mizo Union became very popular because of its relief efforts, right? Under the leadership of Lal Denga and other Mizo leaders, this group became very popular amongst the Mizos. It acted as their political representative and acted as a social NGO that helped the people during the famine. Right? It procured food from nearby areas, distributed the food supplies, and tried to revive the agriculture as well. And it tried to tackle the rodent pest infestation as well. So because of all these efforts, Mizo Union became popular, and it virtually became the representative of the Mizo community itself. So now the Mizos who had this grudge, the leaders of Mizo Union, who blamed the Indian government and the Assamese government for the crisis, they declared a war against India by forming a violent armed group called MNF, the Mizo National Front. All right, the MNF was established in 1960s to lead a separatist war against India, to break the Mizo areas away and to form an independent nation for the Mizos. Because it was not just about the famine and the general discrimination, it was also about their language and their cultural identity. The Mizos felt the Assamese never respected their language. Just like the Bodo language was ignored by the Assam government and only Assamese was enforced everywhere. Similarly, Mizo language was ignored, right? Mizos didn't get an opportunity to promote their language and protect their culture. And they saw that the government was imposing Assamese on these small tribes. So this was a case of inter-ethnic rivalry, right? It was a case of inter-ethnic issues that propped up, where the Mizos held the Assamese to be responsible for all the problems, as their state, their culture, their well-being, everything had been compromised, which triggered this resentment and anger and hatred that led the Mizo Union leaders to form this armed group, this insurgent outfit called MNF, the Mizo National Front. It had a separate armed unit, the Mizo National Army. All right, it was a very well organized group. The MNF would act like the political branch leading the insurgent separatist war, and the Mizo National Army would be the armed force, the armed branch of the separatist unit. So, under the leadership of Lal Denga, Pu Lal Denga, MNF wanted to liberate Mizo areas from Assam and India and form this separate country, which they wanted to turn into a Christian nation. All right, although religion didn't play a role here, you find this interesting link, right? I pointed this out with Bodos and Nagas as well. How these left-wing extremist groups have a religious connect, right? They've all tried to turn their so-called, future countries into a Christian state. So all these factors triggered the violent armed movement, and very quickly the MNF got support across the border in East Pakistan. Especially when India started targeting the insurgents through counter-insurgency operations, right? We extended AFSPA as well. Armed Forces Special Powers Act was extended. And again, Indian Army Assam Rifles were given the lead role to counter the insurgency. So as India started countering the threat, the MNF shifted base from India and sought support in East Pakistan. That is today's Bangladesh. So Pakistani state agencies, the Pakistani intelligence, they would shelter Pu Lal Denga. They would give him a safe haven to hide and supply funds and weapons to his outfit to wage this war against India. So in a way, this was one of Pakistan's first covert war against India. It came even before Khalistan movement, even before Kashmir insurgency and terrorism. So from 1960s itself, Pakistan was playing a role in sheltering the MNF across the border in East Pakistan. So this movement escalated very quickly. So the region was declared as a disturbed region, the disturbed area, under the Assam Disturbed Areas Act, and AFSPA was brought in to give special powers for the security operations. Is that clear? But one very interesting and one very tragic development again in Mizoram was that the then Indira Gandhi government ordered a very controversial military operation. The Indian Air Force was used by the Indira Gandhi government to carry out airstrikes against MNF bases in Aswal and in other parts of the Mizo district, that is in today's Mizoram. Now, this is extremely controversial because usually we don't use armed forces against internal conflicts. Now, you take Naxalism, for example. In the case of Naxalism, right, we have used very limited force. Did you ever wonder how come Indian Army is not directly involved? Indian Air Force is not involved in tackling Naxals, right? Indian Army, Air Force are involved only in a non-combat role, as I explained. Indian Army helps in training. It provides jungle warfare training to the central forces and the police forces. Indian Air Force is only providing helicopters. They are deployed in a non-combat role, and the Air Force is providing only airlift capability, right? No airstrikes are being conducted by the Air Force in the Naxal areas. So have you ever wondered why armed forces are not used against Naxals? Then how come Indian Army is involved in counter-insurgency, counter-terror operations in Jammu and Kashmir? How come the army was used in Punjab in Operation Blue Star, right? Then how come Indian Army is deployed in Northeast India, right? But not Indian Air Force. For example, against Kashmir terrorism, we haven't used Indian Air Force in Punjab as well, right? What could be the reason? The reason is very simple. When you use your armed forces against your own citizens on your own territory, it could lead to large scale damage, because the armed forces are generally not meant for internal conflicts. They're not trained, they're not capable of dealing with internal conflicts, because their training, their equipment teaches them, equips them to deal with the external enemy, to fight a war where the first option is to kill. Armed forces are trained to kill, inflict brutal damage, and the heavy weaponry they use causes large scale indiscriminate damage. The heavy weapons like rockets, missiles, battle tanks, artillery guns, if they are used in combat, right, it will inflict heavy damage. It will not discriminate between civilians and combatants. So the collateral damage will increase if you use your armed forces in an internal conflict. You'll end up bombing your own territory. You'll end up killing your own citizens on a large scale, causing large scale human rights violations. And this will further create a distance between the locals and the government, right? It will further the divide, adding more support to the insurgent movement which is going on. So that is why subsequent Indian governments have taken a calculated decision to never use Indian armed forces in fighting Naxalism. In the Naxal corridor, we have never used Indian Army or Indian Air Force in a combat role. They are used only in a non-combat role, where they're giving indirect support in training, in airlift, etc. But Northeast India, Kashmir and Punjab are slightly different. They are border areas where cross-border support was coming in for terrorism. Right? In the Northeast, support was coming from Myanmar and Bangladesh, where China and Pakistan were involved in backing many of these groups. Thus, it posed a much bigger threat to our integrity and sovereignty. Right? These terrorists were crossing the border, hiding in other countries and coming back, infiltrating back to carry out the attacks. So as it involved a cross-border angle, that is why it is felt that the army should be deployed. Same with Punjab and even with Jammu and Kashmir. In Punjab, at least, most of the counter-insurgency operations were led by Punjab police. It was only in case of Operation Blue Star where Indian special forces were used, because it was a very complex situation where hundreds of terrorists were hiding in the Golden Temple. So only in case of Operation Blue Star, the Indian Army special forces were used. But otherwise, in Punjab, other regular counter-insurgency operations were led by Punjab police itself. But in Kashmir, to tackle terrorism and insurgency, Indian Army has been given the lead role, because again, there is a cross-border threat. There is a direct cross-border support coming from Pakistan across the LOC. Pakistani state agencies are giving support to these terrorists. They have a safe haven across the border. They're infiltrating into India. So this poses a bigger threat to our integrity and sovereignty. And that is why Indian Army has been deployed in Kashmir and also in Northeast India. So using Indian Army in itself is leading to a lot of controversies, allegations of human rights violations. But Indian Air Force was never ever used in an internal situation. This is the only instance in the Mizo region, while fighting MNF, for the first and only time, Indian Air Force was used to bomb Indian territory. As MNF posed a credible threat, it was posing a serious threat to India, right? It was getting cross-border support from East Pakistan. The government of India decided to use Indian Air Force to bomb the bases of MNF. That led to a lot of collateral damage. That too in cities like Aswal, if you're using fighter jets to drop bombs, right? That too, these were not precision bombs or targeted bombs. We didn't have them back then. These were unguided bombs. They could land here and there, explode anywhere, causing a lot of collateral damage, causing indiscriminate killing of not just the combatants but even civilians. This operation was largely kept classified for many years, right? It was only revealed much later, and it has been a very controversial military operation. Recently, the Prime Minister brought this up. PM Modi, who was facing a lot of criticism for mishandling the Manipur situation, right? The opposition was criticizing the Prime Minister for not speaking about the Manipur issue and not carrying out effective intervention. So while replying to the opposition, Prime Minister Modi, he brought this up. He said, When you were in power, you carried out airstrikes against our people in Mizoram, right? He brought this up and he made this a political controversy. So you should know about this, that this is the only instance where we have used the Indian Air Force to carry out airstrikes on our own people on our own soil. All right. The then government believed it was needed, as the threat was very severe. It was needed to tackle the MNF. But later, once it was revealed, once the public got to know about it, it became very controversial because of the large-scale civilian deaths that had occurred in the operation. That's why airstrikes are deadly. Is that clear? That too in a crowded area, if you carry out airstrikes, it has a deadly, brutal impact, inhuman impact. That's why, if you look at the Gaza Strip, right, Israeli airstrikes have always been criticized, not just now. From many, many years, Israel has been conducting indiscriminate airstrikes, and that is where it faces criticism of human rights violations. All right, because it will not just target Hamas, it will target innocent Palestinians as well. Right, the same happened here, so it became a controversial issue. So Mizo insurgency continued all the way until 1987. From early 1960s till 1987, for around 2.5 decades, the insurgency continued, causing destabilization of the region. But finally, the state government and the government of India, they acted effectively. The local administration, right, because Mizo area was still not given statehood, the local administration, and in collaboration with the government of Assam and the Indian government, they acted very effectively in conducting counterinsurgency operations. They also countered the propaganda of the insurgents, the fake, exaggerated messages that they were spreading against the Indian state. That was countered with perception management by the Indian agencies. Indian agencies would counter their propaganda to win the people on our side. Development also became a priority. The Mizo areas were given better development in 1970s and 1980s. All right, and more importantly, the MNF lost support in 1971 when Bangladesh was liberated by India. This was a huge blow to the Mizo insurgent movement. Until then, it was thriving because they had support in East Pakistan. Pakistani state agencies were supporting them. Now, when India liberated Bangladesh and broke Pakistan into two parts, right? Bangladesh got a friendly government, a pro-India government. Immediately, MNF was dismantled. They lost their support base. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's government would never support these insurgents. And as a result, they were forced to run back to India, where Indian forces effectively targeted them. So through better operations, focus on development, by countering the propaganda, we managed to weaken the movement, and finally we started a peace process with the MNF in 1980s. A peace process was initiated to hold a dialogue with the insurgents to try and settle the conflict peacefully by making some concessions. This peace process finally led to the signing of the Mizo Peace Accord, which brought the insurgency to an end. Please write down this point. The Mizo Peace Accord, signed in 1986, led to the surrender of MNF. The Mizo National Front surrendered, gave up its insurgent war, and in return, full statehood was provided to Mizoram. It was fully carved out from Assam and granted full statehood in 1987. Along with that, few other concessions were given, like financial concessions were made, promises were made with regard to better development, better investments in Mizoram. And as a result of this process, peace was established in Mizoram. This was a successful model of conflict resolution. It's one of the first conflicts that we have successfully resolved. Right? Mizo insurgency has not come back. MNF today is a political party. After surrendering, Pu Lal Denga converted MNF into a political party, contested the state elections that were held, and won multiple times. MNF has formed the state government for multiple terms, and Lal Denga himself became the chief minister. So once upon a time, he was an insurgent hiding away from India and Pakistan. And now, after the peace process, he entered mainstream politics with his outfit, which had become a political party, and led the party to victory in state elections and became the leader as well of the state government. This was the complete transformation we achieved. It was a success story for India. It was a combined effort, right? The security forces, the Indian Army and Assam Rifles played an important role. Intelligence agencies played an important role in tackling the threats and in perception management. The state level, local administration, and the central government focused on better governance and development to meet the basic necessities of the people, to meet the needs of the people, so we could win their hearts and minds. Parallelly, dialogue was started with the insurgents and with the Mizo people as well. It was this combined strategy that led to success, and it was a successful model of conflict resolution for India. So, Mizo insurgency has completely ended. It hasn't revived after 1987. Is that clear? There are other armed groups in Mizoram which pose a threat today, but they're all criminal organizations basically operating along the Myanmar border. There are few Mizo armed groups, right? They're not connected to MNF. They are these local armed groups. They're operating along the Mizo Myanmar border. They've attacked our Kaladan project as well. The Kaladan multimodal project, which we have with Myanmar, was threatened by some of these armed groups in the Mizoram Myanmar border. So India and Myanmar have jointly targeted these armed groups, which are nothing but criminal organizations. They're not leading any insurgent movement as such. They get involved in drug smuggling, arms smuggling, in all these illegal criminal activities, right? And they control these areas by using their weapons. So they were opposing the Kaladan project. They tried targeting it. So India and Myanmar retaliated through joint operations, and these Mizo groups, armed groups, have been eliminated recently through an operation called Operation Sunrise. Operation Sunrise 1 and Sunrise 2 was conducted in 2018-2019. It was a joint counter-insurgency operation by India and Myanmar. It led to the elimination of these armed criminal groups that were destabilizing the border and threatening the Kaladan project. Understood? Apart from that, Mizo insurgency has not revived. The state has become very peaceful today. But however, the neighborhood is vulnerable. Like Manipur has seen these ethnic clashes. There's a possibility of insurgency reviving in Manipur. Myanmar has become fully destabilized. There's a refugee flow coming in where Mizos are accommodating the Chins. So these unstable developments that are happening in the neighborhood, that could affect Mizoram going forward. All right, but Mizo insurgency has ended and it has become a peaceful state. Next, coming to Tripura, the last topic in Northeast insurgency. We'll look at Tripura and we'll wrap it up with a conclusion, a final discussion on the common approach we have taken towards solving Northeast insurgency. Tripura, if you look at the map, it shares an important border with East Pakistan then, and that is today Bangladesh. So from here, Tripura also has received a huge influx of refugees and illegal migrants. Just like Assam, where the flow of refugees and illegal migrants from Bangladesh triggered the insurgency in 1970s. Similarly, in Tripura as well, insurgency broke out by the natives, by the native Tripuris, as an opposition against the large-scale illegal migration happening from Bangladesh. Is that clear? This was the root cause. It's exactly the same with Ulfa, right? What we studied with Ulfa yesterday in Assam, it's the same reason here in the same period. Once Bangladesh was born in 1971, large scale illegal migration started happening into Assam, into West Bengal as well, and into Tripura. The Tripuris, who are the native ethnic group, they felt threatened by the Bengali migrants who are coming into the state. All right. And what happened was the Tripuris who had inhabited the Agartala area, which is more of a plain region along the Bangladesh border, they lost their homeland. They were pushed out by the Bengali migrants who were coming in large numbers. Tripuris were pushed into the hills, whereas the plains got occupied by the Bengali migrants. Essentially, the demography changed because of the large scale illegal migration. Understood? As several lakh illegal migrants came in from across the border, they kept pushing up the Tripuris. They started moving them out. This was a socio-ethnic problem that developed. If there is a large inflow of outsiders like this on such a scale, this is usually bound to happen. So the native Tripuris, they were pushed out into the hill areas, and the plain areas got occupied by the Bengali migrants. So this led to resentment amongst the Tripuris. Their well-being, their land, their resources, their identity got compromised because of the large-scale illegal migration. And they held the state government and the government of India responsible for preventing illegal migration. They failed to prevent illegal migration. So as a protest against illegal migration, some of the radical Tripuris, they took up violence. They started a violent insurgency in 1970s that lasted all the way until 1990s. Again, for a good 25 to 30 years, Tripura was affected by insurgency led by two major groups. Please write down the names of these groups. NLFT, National Liberation Front of Tripura, and the All Tripura Tiger Force, ATTF. These were the two major insurgent groups of Tripura. Their goal was to liberate the area from India and establish a separate country called Tripuri land or Tripura land. All right, it was built on Tripuri nationalism. They believed that only by fighting against illegal migrants and India, they could protect their land and rights and their cultural identity. So they waged this violent insurgent war for many years. And they had a lot of connections with ULFA, NDFB, NSCN, and other groups. Many of these groups are having connections. They do have connections with each other. They help out each other in accessing safe havens, in crossing borders, in smuggling drugs and weapons. So there does exist some kind of support between different groups which are operating across the Northeast region. All right. So these are the two Tripuri outfits that pose the biggest threat, causing large-scale violence in Tripura from 70s to 90s. So as you can expect, India brought in AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and through a well-crafted strategy, we ended insurgency in Tripura as well. Again, a mixed strategy, a combined strategy was used, focusing on security operations, along with better intelligence operations and psychological warfare, in order to counter the propaganda of the extremists. Along with these security efforts by our security and intelligence agencies, the governments provided for better governance. They provided for better welfare and development, especially the state government of Tripura under a left government, under the CPI Marxist government. It provided very effective administration under the leadership of a legendary chief minister. Right? You would have heard about him. I want you guys to figure out who is this popular leader from Tripura. Tripura had a very popular chief minister from the left, from the CPI Marxist party. Right? This is one of the states where CPI Marxist has won elections repeatedly. Other than Tripura, it's West Bengal and Kerala. These are the three states, only three states where CPI Marxist has won elections. So in Tripura, there was this very popular legendary chief minister who has been credited with better governance in Tripura. The central government also played a role by providing right funds and investments. So it's again a combined strategy where the propaganda was countered through influence operations or psychological operations. Right? We call this Psy war. It's part of information warfare that's involved in any conflict, be it an internal conflict or an external war. Intelligence agencies get involved in Psy war or psychological warfare to manage perceptions. Right? They counter the propaganda, they project the achievements, and they try to form the right perceptions to create favorable support for the government. So these operations, accompanied with better intelligence gathering, better border security, and effective counterinsurgency operations by the army and the Assam Rifles, they took care of the security problem. The developmental issues were also addressed parallelly, along with tackling the divisions between the Bengalis and the Tripuris. As the region developed, opportunities was created for everyone, and the divisions were forgotten. Right? Tripuris were threatened that they will never see welfare and development. Now that states started developing, they enjoyed the benefits of development. The issues were forgotten. Many Bengali migrants, they still remain in Tripura, but right now it's no longer an issue. Right? Also, border security improved to curb the illegal migration that was happening. It slightly went down. And particularly after 2009, after Sheikh Hasina came to power, illegal migration has declined by a very big margin. So post 1990s and early 2000, Tripura insurgency has declined and it is non-existent today, and AFSPA has been removed from Tripura. Tripura became the first state to remove AFSPA. It became the first state where AFSPA was revoked. The state government adopted a resolution in the state assembly calling for revoking AFSPA as the security situation had improved. This was finally approved by the Ministry of Home Affairs, and AFSPA was removed in 2015. So Tripura became the first state in Northeast India where AFSPA was removed. Is that clear? So this is what you should know about insurgency in Tripura. It's another successful case where we have effectively tackled the insurgency, and through a mixed strategy, we have resolved the conflict. So Tripura and Mizoram, they are successful models for conflict resolution. So one should hope that we can replicate the same in other states and with other insurgent movements as well. But of course, the same model will not work everywhere, right? The causes will be different, the issues, the factors are different. It has worked with Bodos. The Bodo insurgency has been resolved today. We are in the process of resolving Naga insurgency. So one should hope that things will get better going forward, and maybe someday, in few years, we could see a day where Northeast region is free from all forms of insurgency. So to tackle the threat, India has used a multi-pronged strategy. If you look at the common response of India, let's say UPSC asks you a mains question, asking you to explain the response of India to tackle Northeast insurgency. Let's say it's not specific to Naga or Tripura or Assam insurgency. A general question has been asked. What measures has India taken over the decades to tackle Northeast insurgency? Explain. These are the 5 points that you have to include. We have always used proportionate force. We have not committed large violations. There might be allegations on the ground. Some rogue officers might have committed few violations, but the state hasn't sponsored it. Right? There might be some rogue officers on the ground committing some violations on the ground by misusing AFSPA and the special powers. But in our counterinsurgency operations, under the special powers of AFSPA, the government has always ensured we'll use proportionate force only. That's why Indian Air Force has not been used except for in the Mizo areas once. This has been important in reducing collateral damage, in protecting civilians, and in reducing human rights violations. This helps in protecting the local support for the government. Because if you use disproportionate force and kill many civilians, it will create more hatred and resentment, creating support for insurgents, not for the government. So proportionate use of force has been extremely crucial, and it has been effective enough to tackle the insurgents. Next, apart from the security operations, we have always been open for talks. This is something you have observed in every insurgency, right? We have covered Naga insurgency, insurgency in Assam, in Tripura, in Mizoram, In every topic, I kept mentioning that the government is talking to the groups, working out a peace process, or we have signed a peace accord. This is another important tool we have used to resolve conflicts, to manage the situation in the Northeast. We've always been flexible. We've always offered incentives so that these insurgents can surrender and talk to us so that we can give some concessions within the ambit of the Indian Constitution. So many peace accords have been struck that helps in stabilizing the region peacefully with minimal force. We have always agreed for granting autonomy when it is necessary. If the demands are genuine, like that of Karbi Anglong, the Dimasas and Bodos, India has not hesitated from giving autonomy under the sixth schedule. All right, under Article 371, there is a series of articles 371A, B, C, etc. goes on until J. Just like Jammu and Kashmir was given special status under 370. Similarly, there are few special provisions for northeastern states under 371. All right, 371 for Nagaland, 371B for another state. Like this, for northeastern states affected by insurgency, special provisions have been included under 371 under the series of articles, and we have not shied away from giving constitutional autonomy under sixth schedule. This shows the flexibility of our constitution as well to accommodate different demands and aspirations. That helps in keeping a check on these tendencies, right? So the structural changes that we have carried out to the constitution, the introduction of autonomy, setting up of autonomous councils, devolving powers to these autonomous councils in key subjects, this has played a key role in resolving and managing several conflicts in Northeast India. Next, of course, we have addressed the developmental challenges. The lack of development has been addressed in a much more efficient manner in the last 30 years. After India started growing at a rapid pace from 1990s, we have focused on Northeast India, improved its connectivity, right? We have built much better infrastructure today. Even through Siliguri corridor, there are better roads and railway lines connecting Northeast with rest of India. We have explored alternate routes through Bangladesh and Myanmar. We have improved the overall infrastructure. Even power plants, industrial clusters are being set up. More job opportunities are being created, and welfare schemes specifically for Northeast region are being implemented. You also have a dedicated ministry for the Northeast region, right, to look after the development and progress of the Northeast region. Even in our foreign policy, we have prioritized the Northeast region under the Look East, Act East policy of India. We have sought to connect the Northeast markets with Southeast Asian and East Asian markets. This has been a priority for India under the Look East, Act East policy. We have tried connecting the Northeast region with Myanmar and Thailand. We have ambitions to connect this further till Vietnam and Singapore to drive growth and connectivity, to improve border trade between Northeast India and Southeast Asia. We also want to attract investments, right? Japan, for example, which is a focus country under Look East, Act East, has become a major investor in Northeast India today. Japan, which is a good friend of India, which has already given India a lot of loans and assistance, has made very big investments in almost every northeastern state. Today, it is funding many projects, road projects, community well-being projects, rural development projects, right? From Assam to Arunachal Pradesh, many projects are being funded by Japan through its concessional loans. So this focus on Northeast region in our foreign policy as well has played a role in developing the region and connecting it with the markets of Southeast and East Asia. So these are the 5 policy approaches of India, the common approaches, which we have used to resolve conflicts in Northeast India. All right. So this completes my detailed discussion and analysis of Northeast insurgency. With this, we have covered all the major insurgencies in all the major states, and we have also examined the common factors responsible for these insurgencies and what is the common response of India. So this should be more than sufficient. Don't go beyond this. See, there is much more to cover. If we want, we can cover or discuss Northeast India for 10 days. The topic is so big, it will need 10 classes just for Northeast insurgency. But trust me, it's not needed for the exam. This is enough. What we have covered is already a little too much. I've ensured we have covered all the big topics, all the major topics. Most questions that will come will be all connected to this. Got it? So I hope everything is clear. Let's take a short break, 15 minutes break. But very important announcement. Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. So before we start, very important announcement. Tomorrow, Saturday, we will have another class of internal security from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Your regular evening timings. Because if you remember, the first class got unfortunately cancelled. So we'll replace that with tomorrow's class. So tomorrow, Saturday, 5 to 8:30 p.m., we'll have an internal security class. Don't forget, please attend the session because I'll be continuing the discussion. All right, please make a note of that. Now, let's look at some main questions that have come from this chapter, from Northeast insurgency. I'll show you all the questions. I'll pick up a couple of them for discussion as well. You will see that all the questions are directly from what we have discussed. That shows that the topics we have covered is enough. It's sufficient. It's a very big topic, but by covering it strategically, we have ensured that most topics needed for the exam gets covered. So going forward, all you have to do is be in touch with current affairs. All the topics we have studied, Naxalism, Khalistan movement, the Kashmir insurgency and terrorism, right? And as well as Northeast insurgency. There are a lot of developments happening right now. So based on these current developments, UPSC is most likely to ask questions. So whatever we have covered, the static part, along with the current affairs from here onwards, that is where you'll get your questions from. So please ensure you cover your current affairs regularly. Now see the questions. Look at the first one. How does illegal trans-border migration pose a threat to India's security? Discuss the strategies to curb this, bringing out the factors which give impetus to such migration. Now, what do you think the question is referring to? Can you let me know in the comments? What is this question referring to specifically? Very good. Femina, Ganesham, Sai Dinesh, they've all given the right answer. Very good. The question is specifically referring to illegal migration. So which northeastern states have suffered from it? Assam and Tripura. So this will be the focus of your answer. You need to talk about illegal trans-border migration, where illegal migrants cross over the border from another country and come to our country. What will happen because of that? So explain in the first part that India has received large-scale illegal migrants, especially from Bangladesh, and the influx of illegal migrants into Northeast India, which is a multi-ethnic indigenous society, has created demographic problems. It has led to socio-ethnic tensions as the native communities have felt threatened, right? They felt that they lose access to their land, their rights and resources. And this increased the tensions leading to clashes, violence and agitations. Then in the body, split your answer, explain about Assam and Tripura briefly. In one small paragraph, explain Assam and Tripura's insurgency, why it started, which were the insurgent groups, explain how they were targeting the Bengali migrants, right? Give that brief explanation and then strategies needed to curb illegal migration. We need better relations with our neighbors. We have to improve border security and border management, right? We can assist the other country in its economic growth. If India assists Bangladesh in its development, more opportunities will be created in Bangladesh itself. So that will prevent illegal migrants from coming to India. If there are opportunities in Bangladesh itself, why will they come to India, right? So suggest 3-4 measures like these and that will complete your answer. Very simple, very straightforward question. It's connected to border security as well and Northeast insurgency. Next question. The northeastern region of India has been infested with insurgency for a very long time. Analyze the major reasons for the survival of armed insurgency in the region. So we have discussed the exact same thing, right? So talk about how northeast region has been affected by insurgency for 7 decades. Since our independence, northeast region has seen many insurgent movements. Give some examples. Start with Naga insurgency and give a couple of examples to show how the insurgency is still active even today. And then analyze the reasons responsible for the survival of so many armed insurgent movements. Go back to the first discussion, the common factors that we discussed, the geography of the place, the presence of so many borders, the hostile neighbors who have given safe havens for these armed groups, the proximity to Golden Triangle, from where these insurgents have easily procured drugs and weapons. Right? List out all the factors, the inter-ethnic rivalries. Correct? So give out all these reasons, mention illegal migration as well, and that will complete your answer. It's very simple, very straightforward questions in internal security. You just have to understand the topic thoroughly, be good with current affairs, and you can just go ahead and write good answers in this subject. Again, one more question on cross-border movement, this time about insurgents. Cross-border movement of insurgents is only one of the several security challenges facing the policing of the border in Northeast India. Examine the various challenges currently emanating across India-Myanmar border and discuss the step to counter the challenges. So it's basically talking about infiltration that happens from across the border. So in the first part of the answer, talk about cross-border infiltration. Right? We have received such cross-border infiltration of terrorists and insurgents, not just from Myanmar, but even from Bangladesh and Pakistan. Make your answer more holistic. Later part of the question is focused on India-Myanmar border, but the initial part of the question is an open question. It's only talking about infiltration, how it threatens our security. So mention that we have seen infiltration across these borders, across Myanmar border, Bangladesh border, and Pakistani border. So this is aiding terrorism, and it means there is cross-border support in those countries. There is a sanctuary, safe sanctuary available for these insurgents. And then focus on the Myanmar border. Explain the geography of the Myanmar border, right? Mention that these are the border states of India. This is the border length, but the geography is very complex. The topography, the terrain is complex. It has hilly mountainous areas, dense forests, remote areas with no connectivity. So all these challenges have aided the infiltration from across the border. Plus, some of the ethnic groups are connected on the other side, like Nagas and Kukis and Mizos. They have connected ethnic groups in Myanmar who give them support from across the border. So bring out these factors and then discuss the steps needed to counter the challenges. Improving border security, cooperating with Myanmar for intelligence sharing, joint operations. So all these measures can be listed out to explain how we can tackle cross-border infiltration. All right. So these were some of the questions that we had picked for discussion. Now let me look at all your doubts, all the questions you guys have asked. And after that, we'll have a small discussion on AFSPA and then start with the next chapter. Let's see the questions. Why Assamese had neglected the Mizos? One, of course, is the inter-community differences. The Assamese, who are the dominant group, right, who are in majority, they've often looked down upon the smaller tribes in Assam. Back then, Assam was this very large state, which included Nagaland as well and Mizoram as well. Right? Mizo was just one district in Assam. So, just like Bodos felt neglected by the Assamese, just like the Karbi Anglong, Dimasas, and Koch Rajbanshis, even they feel discriminated by the Assamese. Similarly, Mizos also felt left out. This has to do with the inter-community rivalries and tensions. One majority community not caring about small minority communities, not looking after their development. The other factor here is about the distance, the failure of the government to reach those areas. Mizo areas were very remote back then. Even now, it's a very remote area. The Assam government did not do enough with regard to providing better connectivity. It didn't focus much on the governance of Mizo areas, which were far away from the state capital. Right? So the failure of governance, the neglect of development, and the discrimination, the intercommunity discrimination. This is why the Mizos felt that they were being discriminated, neglected by the Assam government. Chituri is asking how Meiteis are living in hilly areas before giving ST status and whether ST status is given by government. See, Meiteis have not been given ST status. All right. The High Court has just asked the government to start the process of giving ST status. That itself triggered the violence. So right now, it is on hold. ST status has not been given. To answer your other question, how Meiteis are living in hilly areas. Meiteis can enter the hill areas. They can live. They can't own property. Meiteis can go to the hill areas like Churchandpur district. All right. They can rent a house. They can set up a shop, run their business. They can reside in the hill areas as well. But they can't buy the land. They can't buy the Kuki tribal land. Only purchase of land is not allowed. Everything else is allowed. They can enter, they can reside, right? They can take property on rent. They can continue their businesses. So that is why few Meitei families were found in hill areas as well. All right. So guys, these were the questions. Now, before starting with the next chapter, let us spend some time in talking about AFSPA. There are some important details I would like to give you about the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Since we have been discussing AFSPA in almost every chapter, right, the topic, of course, is very important in internal security. It's been one of our primary tools to protect our security forces in these conflict zones. It has been highly controversial. There is a strong opposition against it. There's a lot of criticism against it. Allegedly, it has directly contributed to large-scale human rights violations by our forces across the conflict zones. Wherever it has been implemented, the same criticism has come up, from Punjab to Northeast to Jammu and Kashmir. At the same time, the government and the security forces, they feel AFSPA is necessary. They feel that such a law is needed. So this is a debatable topic. So you can't take just one side. You can't simply criticize AFSPA and say that human rights violations have happened. You can't simply support it blindly just because you support the government or the armed forces. You need to take a balanced stand. You should look at both the arguments and present a balanced opinion. That's why many experts, they say that AFSPA is a necessary evil. It is a very draconian law, a very stringent law, which has no place in any democracy. In fact, such a law does not exist in any democratic country. It's only in India where you have such a law. Definitely, there are problems with the law, there are violations happening. But it is seen as necessary to deal with the conflicts. All right, so it's called a necessary evil by many experts. Now, what is the origin of this law? There is a colonial origin. It's of British origin. It was first introduced in 1942 to counter the Quit India movement. As Mahatma Gandhi had announced the Quit India movement, and India's leaders were preparing for this mass struggle, the British tried to preempt the Quit India movement by introducing this law. It would give special powers to the security forces to deal with any law and order threat situation in a disturbed area. All right. So because of its colonial origin, the law inherently has very stringent draconian provisions. The British used the law to suppress our freedom movement. They used the law to target our freedom fighters. That is the spirit of this law. The security forces, they were given tremendous powers under the law by the British with the only intention of crushing our freedom movement, nothing else. It meant the law was designed to lead to violations. It was designed to empower the forces to use maximum force as much as needed, as much as possible, to crush the freedom movement, even at the cost of killing many people, injuring many people, even at the cost of violating human rights. This is the spirit of the law. This is indisputable. It's a fact. Because of the controversial nature of this law, post independence, we did not continue the law. Is that clear? It was used briefly in 1947 during the partition. That is the second time that AFSPA was used. After the Quit India movement, it was used briefly in some parts in the border areas to contain the large-scale communal violence that had broken out between Hindus and Muslims and even the Sikhs, right? Because the partition had further widened the communal divide, causing large-scale violence between communities. Towards the western and even the eastern borders, towards Punjab and Bengal, large-scale communal violence was happening where extremists from all the sides were targeting each other, right? Radicals from all these religions were targeting the other communities and civilians, triggering a massive human tragedy. So to contain the communal violence, briefly AFSPA was introduced in the border areas. Immediately it was revoked. Once the situation stabilized, it was revoked. So post independence, we did not continue this law, right? Because the independent government of India under Prime Minister Nehru knew that this is a outdated law. It's a colonial law designed to crush any kind of uprising. It had no place in a democracy, so we didn't want to continue this law. But due to unfortunate circumstances in 1950s created by the Naga insurgency, the government was pushed to use the law again. By 1947, Naga insurgents had declared a rebellion, right? The separatist movement had started. And by 1950s, the NNC, the Naga insurgents, were carrying out large-scale violence in Assam, in the Naga areas. So to deal with the threat, the Indian Army and Assam Rifles were finding it to be very challenging. They were operating in a very hostile environment. And they always had a fear that if they opened fire, right, or if they conduct any kind of operations, tomorrow they might be held accountable. They might be asked to explain why they opened fire, why they arrested a certain person, right? Why they used this amount of force. Such questions might come up, right? Now, the fear of accountability, the fear of being targeted later after the operations have happened, affects the morale of the forces. That too in such a hostile environment where there is a real threat to their lives. They are operating in a difficult geography where the insurgents have some local support and cross-border support. It's a very challenging environment for our forces. Sometimes they'll not have enough time to think. They have to make split-second decisions. See, later it is easy to sit somewhere else, discuss whether it should have happened and shouldn't have happened, and pass judgments. That's very easy to do. In the field, when you're deployed on the ground in a battle zone, where you have active insurgents targeting the government forces and the civilians, you need to make these quick split-second decisions whether to open fire or not. Even 1 second hesitation can cost lives. So the forces can't sit and wait. They can't sit and think. They can't sit and wait for approvals and permissions to be taken. These decisions have to be made on the ground by each individual officer and Jawan deployed on the ground, because the conflict is happening in real time. Is that clear? This is not a planned operation. It's not a one-time planned operation. It's a constant fight that will go on for years. So the forces have to make the call for themselves. They have to decide on themselves whether they're going to arrest this person, whether they're going to target this property, enter this house, search for evidence, or maybe destroy that property if needed. If they believe terrorists are hiding in a house, they can't sit and wait for approvals to come in. They have to act and maybe destroy the property as well. Maybe they have to open fire and kill the insurgents. So let's say there is an encounter happening, right? Civilians might be trapped and civilians might get hit. They might get injured or killed. Tomorrow, if you question the forces for that, bring cases against them, carry out inquiries against them, you tell me which soldier will operate, which soldier will agree to be deployed in such a difficult environment. They will lose their motivation, they'll lose their morale. There could also be many false cases brought up. The hostile elements with local support might bring up false accusations just to target the forces. So every time if you keep entertaining these cases, the forces will not work freely. They'll not operate here. Trust me, no one will have the morale to fight. You need to understand this from the perspective of the security forces on the ground who are dealing with a very, very difficult situation. So a need was felt to give them that immunity. Some degree of legal immunity was definitely needed. But problem is, AFSPA provides blanket immunity. So we first implemented this to deal with Naga insurgency, as it was felt necessary to motivate the troops, to protect the troops, so that they can operate against these insurgents. Then as insurgency spread to Assam, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, automatically AFSPA was extended everywhere. All right, so almost whole Northeast India was covered, including Arunachal Pradesh. Even though Arunachal didn't have insurgency, since Arunachal was being used by the insurgents to move and hide, even in Arunachal, in some parts, AFSPA was imposed. So first place where it was imposed is the Northeast region. Starting from the Naga areas, covering almost the whole of Northeast India. Next, which is the second place where AFSPA was implemented? Can you tell me? Which is the second place was where AFSPA was imposed? Very good. Punjab. When the Khalistan movement broke out and escalated into a major threat, we brought in AFSPA in 1985 by declaring Punjab as a disturbed area. Then finally, Jammu and Kashmir. After militancy broke out in 1987, we brought in AFSPA in 1989 to empower the forces and give them some immunity so they can operate freely and target these terrorists and insurgents. So this is the order in which AFSPA has been implemented in India. Now, let me tell you the powers given. The law says, the expansion of the law is Armed Forces Special Powers Act, meaning some special powers are being given to the security forces. What are the special powers? Who will enjoy these special powers? That is the question. The special powers are given to the police, to the Central Armed Police Forces, that is your CAPFs, which are deployed in counter-insurgency, counter-terror role, and to the Indian Army as well. It applies to all the security forces which are involved in counter-insurgency, counter-terrorist operations. Right? Now take Jammu and Kashmir, for example. As J&K is declared as a disturbed area and AFSPA is imposed there, all the forces operating there, which are involved in counter-insurgency, counter-terror operations, all of them will enjoy the powers of AFSPA. So J&K police, the Central Armed Police Forces, if they are involved in these operations, like CRPF is involved. All right, in Kashmir, CRPF has a role to play. Then Indian Army. In Northeast, it would be the concerned state police, Assam Rifles, and Indian Army. So these security forces, all of them, which are deployed here, which are engaging in counter-insurgency, counter-terror operations, they all get the special powers. Now, what kind of special powers are given? They get a license to kill. This is a slightly exaggerated term, but that is exactly what it is. It means they have legal immunity for opening fire at any suspected individual, anyone who is classified as a threat, the forces can open fire. Each individual soldier can decide for themselves, of course, under the operational command of their officers, and take a call to open fire, even with the intention to kill. Not just to injure or disable. With the intention to kill, they can open fire and kill the individual based on suspicion, based on threat level. All right. Next, apart from the right to open fire and kill a suspected individual, they can arrest the suspect. They can arrest, they can search a property for evidence or for terrorists who are hiding. They can even destroy that property if insurgents or terrorists are hiding in it. All of this can be done without any warrant. See, in a regular area which is not disturbed, where there is no AFSPA, if the police, if they have to enter your house, they need a warrant. They should have approached the magistrate, the judicial magistrate, the district magistrate, given some evidence about the case, about the accused, and then get a warrant. Only then they can enter your house and search your house or collect the evidence, or even sometimes destroy the property, or sometimes arrest and take that individual away. If police turn up at your door without a warrant, you can shut the door on their face. You have that legal constitutional right. Police have no right to enter your house without a warrant. This is the power citizens have in a constitutional democracy. This has been provided to create a system of checks and balances so that the police don't misuse their powers. Right? So in a regular area, police can't arrest anyone. Forget arresting, they can't even enter your house. They can't search your house even for evidence without a warrant. But in a disturbed area, this is removed. This protection, which is critical, is removed because security forces may not have the time to go get a warrant. Also, it might compromise their operation, right? If they go on obtaining approvals, there might be a leak somewhere and classified operations might leak out and the insurgents might escape even before the forces reach there. So to protect the security and integrity of the operation and to save the time, forces can arrest, search property, destroy property without a warrant. All right. So these are some of the tremendous powers given, and they enjoy legal immunity for all these actions. Now, what if violations have happened? What does the law say about that? What if there is a human right violation? What if, let's say, there is some rogue officer, he is mentally disturbed, or he has very wrong morals and ethics. He doesn't care about human rights or constitutional principles. He just wants a promotion, he wants a reward, right? So, out of these various factors, one rogue officer might have gone and killed an innocent. In that case, what will happen? Let's say a team of rogue soldiers have destroyed someone's property, or they've arrested some people and tortured them when they were innocents. If such violations have happened, what next? You can raise a complaint, but to register the case, to register the FIR, government approval is mandatory. Meaning, if you directly go to a police station in that jurisdiction saying that please register the FIR against the forces, this particular unit, they have killed a innocent, it's a murder that they have committed, so I want to register a case. If you tell that to the police station, they'll turn you back. They'll not take your complaint because the forces are protected. You need to approach the government for approval. If the government approves an investigation, only then the complaint is registered. Then the government will order an investigation internally. The details will not be disclosed in the public domain, and through tribunals, the cases are prosecuted. In the case of the Indian Army, military tribunals will take care of it. And in the case of your regular forces, then it will be pushed into the judiciary, into the criminal judicial system. But the whole process is highly opaque. There is no transparency. All right. And also, the government will have a vested interest to not permit any investigation or filing of cases against the troops. Why? One, government will be worried about the morale of the troops. Second, they don't want any political controversy. Imagine if large scale violations have happened, the media, opposition, public, they will grill the government. Government will be answerable. So what will they do? They will cover up those cases. They'll never give the approval that is needed. Without government's approval, there is no case, no investigation, no trial. These officers, guilty rogue officers, they'll go scot-free. They'll not be punished. This is where the concern comes up. Is that clear? It's a very genuine concern. See, until now, I was talking in support of the law. I was mentioning why this law is needed, why immunity is needed, how our troops are operating in such a difficult environment, so they need some protection. But at the same time, the blanket immunity which has been given, it's almost blanket immunity. And the opaqueness of the entire process, the lack of transparency, this has allowed violations to happen with impunity, with no accountability. Is that clear? This is again not just a personal opinion. This is based on evidence and facts. From our conflict zones, many investigations have happened by private entities, by media, NGOs, and civil society groups, and even by government appointed committees and court appointed committees. They've all looked into these cases and they have found prima facie evidence, that is, initial evidence on the face of it, has been visible to indicate that human right violations have indeed been committed by some rogue officers. See, I'm not saying our entire forces will do it. In fact, our security forces are some of the most professional forces in the world, right? Especially the Indian Army, even our Central Armed Police Forces. They're thoroughly professional, well trained, well educated. They understand the law of the land, they understand the consequences, they know the constitutional obligations they have, right? They understand the value of human rights. They're taught in their training. You can't say the same about your police. State police are highly ineffective, highly politicized, corrupt. So state police forces are more prone to commit these violations. But at least your central forces are slightly better than your state police. Even though the forces are professional, there could be these rogue elements here and there. There will come up these officers, right? Like I said, they have all the wrong agenda, the wrong motivations. From being mentally disturbed all the way till deliberately doing it, maybe for rewards and promotions, right? Or sometimes the impact of war leads to a lot of post-traumatic stress, right? Which pushes the officers to depression, anxiety, and they might retaliate against the insurgents and the locals just for the sake of it, just for the sake of getting revenge. So there are many possibilities where such rogue officers might break the law and commit these brutal murders and violations. So many independent investigations have happened parallelly from whatever is available in the public domain. Various media outlets, NGOs and activist groups, and appointed committees by the government and the judiciary. They have all found initial evidence, basic evidence on the face of it, that in many cases violations have happened. And in majority of the cases, government has not given approval for investigation and they have been shut down. There are very, very few cases in India where honest investigations have happened and the guilty officers have been punished. The examples are very few. All right. From Northeast India to Punjab to J&K, there are cases of fake encounters where innocents have been branded as terrorists and killed, usually for reward and promotions. Similarly, locals are targeted, especially after an attack. The local units will be very angry, right? They want revenge immediately. They target the local villagers, and to extract information from them, they might torture them. There are rapes which have been committed and sexual incidents or molestations which have been carried out. Entire villages have been burned down, properties have been destroyed. So such cases have happened here and there, right? It's quite a few cases have happened in Northeast India, especially in Manipur, in Punjab as well, in Jammu and Kashmir as well. So this leads to the strong opposition against AFSPA, right? That is why the strong opposition exists, the controversy exists. Is that clear? So to resolve the issue or to find a way forward, the government and the Supreme Court have appointed few committees in the past. I'll name the committees. I'll also tell you what conclusions they have drawn. One of the first major committees was the BP Jeevan Reddy Commission. BP Jeevan Reddy was a former Supreme Court judge. So under his chairmanship, the BP Jeevan Reddy Commission was set up. Then later we had the Santosh Hegde Committee, again another Supreme Court judge. We also had the second ARC, the second Administrative Reforms Commission under Veerappa Moily. Then recently we had the Justice J.S. Verma Committee, which was set up after the Nirbhaya gang rape case. After the Nirbhaya incident in Delhi, J.S. Verma Committee had been set up to look into the issue of women safety and women's security. So all these commissions have dealt with AFSPA. The first two especially, BP Jeevan Reddy Commission, Santosh Hegde Committee, they were specifically set up to review AFSPA. All right. Second ARC under Veerappa Moily was looking at administrative reforms across different issues. One of the issue that second ARC addressed was AFSPA in conflict areas. J.S. Verma Committee was set up mainly for women's safety and security, to review all the laws in the country that deal with rapes, sexual molestation, and women's safety and security issues. So while conducting this review, J.S. Verma Committee looked into AFSPA as well and the cases of sexual offenses that have come up under AFSPA. This was the specific inquiry that J.S. Verma Committee looked into. Now, all the commissions, all of them, they have flagged the risk associated with the special powers. See, the individual observation is not needed from each commission. You should understand the general observation from all these commissions. So if you look at the four commissions and what they have said, you can conclude that they have all flagged that the special powers given are risky. They have said they have no place in a democracy. One of the commission even called it a draconian law. It's a very strong term to use. All right. It's called it a draconian law, meaning it's outdated and it's dangerous. Prima facie evidence has been noticed by these commissions regarding human rights violations. Within the powers given to them, in the limited inquiries they have done, they have seen some basic evidence initially to indicate that murders have been committed, kidnapping and torture has been committed, rapes have been committed. Right? They have observed that there are these incidents which have happened in our conflict zones. We can't ignore this. We can't just tolerate this. In the name of national security, you can't be violating human rights on this scale. And moreover, it is self-defeating. If your forces are committing such violations, even if it's few, let's say there is only one incident per year, even that is a very big cost, because the more violations, the more will be the resentment amongst the local people. You can never win the hearts and minds of the locals and the support. You will never win this ideological war. You cannot defeat insurgency by committing human right violations. Rather, it will help the insurgents. It will help their propaganda. Because what are the insurgents saying? They're telling the locals that your government doesn't care about you, right? That's why they're asking them to fight. And if your government forces are committing these violations, even if it is one case, even if it's one rogue officer, right, they can tarnish the image of the entire force and the entire government. One incident is enough to create deep-rooted divisions where the locals will not trust the forces, right? We'll lose the local support. Without local support, you can't fight these wars, and locals might start backing the insurgents. So that is the reason why we need to honestly deal with these cases that come up. More transparency is needed, more transparent investigations have to happen, and the strictest of punishments have to be delivered to these rogue officers. You need to make an example out of them. Because at any cost, you can't allow your forces to commit these violations, right? It might happen in dictatorships, in authoritarian governments, but not in a democracy like India. You cannot tolerate these incidents, that too from the forces. They have a higher obligation, despite all the challenges that they are operating in, right? We can understand the hostile environment, the difficulties, but still, not a single officer can be spared for the violations that might happen. So if there is such a misuse of the law, you need to be transparent, conduct thorough investigations, hold those officers responsible, hold them accountable, and give them the strictest of punishments. All right, but it will not happen under the current law. Right now, AFSPA is such that it is biased towards the government and the security forces. Since government itself is the approving authority, government will never give the permission except in rare cases where there is tremendous public and media pressure. All right, even if permission is given, honest investigations will not happen, right? Because it's all opaque. The trials are also pushed into military tribunals in case of the army, so it's not accessible to the public. So the opaqueness and the closed nature of the hearings is another problem. So then what is the solution? On one hand, I'm saying such a law, such a immunity is needed. On the other hand, we are criticizing it, saying violations are happening. So what do we do? So what do you suggest in your answers? Let's say the question comes up. You should take a balanced position. Provide the arguments in favor and against. Provide the pros and cons. Provide both. Present the argument of the critics. Present the argument of the government and the security forces. Then you can clearly tell that AFSPA is outdated. It has no place in a democracy. In the current form, right, there are concerns. There are valid concerns that have come up, and you can quote these committees to justify your argument. Mention these 4 commissions. Please mention that these commissions itself, they have noted that AFSPA is draconian. It has led to possibly some violations. They all have recommended changes, either an outright repeal or some changes to the law. So you can suggest some options. What can be done? You can suggest a way forward. But you have to point out that under AFSPA, there are serious concerns. So you can't continue in the current format. That can't be done. There should be some changes. So you can suggest either AFSPA can be amended. You can amend the law to make it better, to provide for accountability, to create checks and balances so that it does not become blanket immunity. Let the immunity be there. Immunity is needed, as I told you. Our forces, they need some protection, right? But the immunity can't be blanket. If there is prima facie evidence that wrongdoings have happened, wrong things have happened, then permissions have to be given and independent, transparent investigations have to happen, right? Maybe amendment can be done where instead of government giving the approval, let there be a judicial commission. Let there be a judicial commission which gives the approval. right? Then it will be independent, it will be more transparent. Or open the investigations, keep it more transparent, and ensure the trials are also more transparent. So these changes can be done in the law. The same law can be used, no problem. Make the amendments, right? Bring it to the parliament, discuss, debate, generate all opinions, and then carry out the amendments. Second option, repeal AFSPA, throw this law out. It is outdated, it's of British origin, it has no place in a democracy. Remove this entirely. Bring a new law which balances the interests. Because AFSPA, the very spirit of the law is wrong. It was framed by the British rulers. They designed it to crush rebellions and protests. So even if you amend, the core of the law, the core spirit of the law will still be the same. Instead, throw this law out. We are anyways doing away with colonial laws. Remove it. Bring a new law in place. Give immunity to the forces while balancing it with human rights. Balance your national security with human rights. That is what is needed. Is that clear? So these suggestions can be provided. Either amend the law or repeal it and bring a new law. But things can't continue as it is. That is for sure. All right. So present arguments both in favor and against. Justify why you are saying it should change. Change has to come. Some change has to come. So use the commissions to justify this stand of yours. They've all taken a stand against it. Second ARC, Santosh Hegde Committee, BP Jeevan Reddy Commission, Justice J.S. Verma Committee. They've all said things about AFSPA which is bothersome, which is really worrying. So I feel that AFSPA has no place in a democracy, or at least not in the current form. So either we repeal it and bring a new law, or carry out amendments to make it more accountable. Right? So that completes your answer. It's a more balanced opinion where you're supporting the security forces, giving them some protection and immunity, while creating a transparent mechanism for honest investigations. So this completes my discussion. One more point, you should know the precondition for imposing the law. To impose AFSPA, the area has to be declared a disturbed area. Under the Disturbed Areas Act, it should be first declared as a disturbed area. It's a precondition. Only then AFSPA can be imposed. All right, that's the process. Who has the powers? State government and MHA. State can also request, or MHA also can do it on its own. Same with revoking it. If it has to be revoked, state can adopt a resolution. It can withdraw the disturbed area designation and then approach MHA to remove AFSPA. Right? Or MHA can do it on its own. If security situation is improved, if it's no longer needed, right, AFSPA can be removed. All right. So today, the government is more flexible. Instead of applying it for the whole state or for a whole district, the government is looking at specific locations where the threat is more. In specific areas where the threat is high, only there AFSPA is being extended. This is also a suggestion you can provide. Instead of imposing it across the entire state or in multiple districts and leaving it like that for decades together, review it regularly. See, BP Jeevan Reddy Commission placed a condition. The BP Jeevan Reddy Commission placed a condition that continuation of AFSPA should be reviewed every 6 months. That is why you read in newspapers, every 6 months you read that AFSPA has been extended here, AFSPA has been revoked here, because every 6 months there is a mandatory review right now. It was recommended by the Jeevan Reddy Commission and ordered by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ordered every 6 months review if it is needed. Look at the security situation. Only then extend this. But governments have blindly extended it. They meet, they review. Irrespective of the situation, they'll simply extend it. So instead of doing that, conduct a clear review, transparent review. Look at the security situation. See if it's needed. Or you can experiment with it. Let's say insurgency has gone down. remove AFSPA for some time. Remove it for 6 months or 1 year. Look at the situation. If the threat increases, bring it back. Who's stopping you? You can always bring AFSPA back, right? So either that, where you experiment with the time, you implement for a few years, remove it, see the situation. If needed, you bring it back. Or the area where it is imposed. Instead of the whole state or entire region, select few districts where the risk is the highest. Impose it only there. The problem is AFSPA has continued for decades. You'll not believe, in Tripura, I told you insurgency came to an end in 1990s. By 95, Tripura insurgency had come to an end. And AFSPA was removed 20 years later in 2015. AFSPA continued for 2 decades in Tripura. In Mizoram, where peace accord was signed, insurgency ended in 1987. Even today, there are places where AFSPA continues in Mizoram. In Punjab, Khalistan movement came to an end by 1991, 1992. It continued for many more years before it was revoked. So governments have a tendency to keep using it as a precaution. Now you can't do that, right? It leads to very serious violations. That is why there is strong opposition against AFSPA in the Northeast, right? The state governments themselves oppose it sometimes. So what you can do is you can suggest these changes which can be done to either make the law better, right? Amend the law itself, or make the law better through its application, review it regularly, use it more strategically, or throw the law out entirely, bring a new law. So you can suggest all these changes as a way forward, and that completes your discussion. Now, I spent some time on this topic because I feel there can be an essay topic on this, right? UPSC might ask an essay topic on how to balance security interests with human rights, right? Or the controversy related to AFSPA itself can come as a topic in your essay. So please pay attention to it. Cover all these points I've mentioned. Read a little more as well if you want, because there will be editorials and columns in Hindu and Indian Express which will keep coming through the year. Every year there will be some articles on AFSPA. So read them, make notes from them, and use that with what we have discussed. All right. So this completes my discussion on all these important topics. Now let's look at the next chapter. Let's start. We have around, I think, 30 to 40 minutes. We have 40 minutes left. It's still sufficient for covering some topics at least. So here in this chapter, we'll be looking at the role of media, social networking sites, that's your social media, in creating security challenges. Then we will also look at cybersecurity, the basics of cybersecurity. These are the two major topics. So let us start with the first topic. Let's look at media, social media, and the internet, and how their misuse can create security challenges. Let us examine this. When I say media, I'm referring to traditional media. What's your traditional media? Television, print, radio. All these constitute your traditional media platforms. First came print, or even before print, it was written, right? Anything that's written down, documents which are written and spread, correct? Any written down material which is spread for communication. Communication has existed since ancient times. Initially, of course, it was written down. Then came print. Then came your radio and television. So all these media platforms, which are inherently slower and smaller in scale, they are your traditional media platforms. I'm saying they're slower and smaller because I'm comparing it with new media. That is your internet-based media, primarily social media platforms, where the communication is super fast. It's instantaneous. It provides for instantaneous communication on a mass scale. That is the primary difference between your traditional and new media. Is that clear? Your traditional media was one to many communication, where one news channel would communicate with many audiences. One newspaper will communicate with many readers, right? Like Hindu. The Hindu is one newspaper. Maybe few lakh people are reading it. The Times of India is another newspaper. Only one newspaper communicating with few more audiences. The Indian Express communicating with few more audiences. So it is one to many communication. One publisher of news and communication, many people receiving that communication. So it's one to many. Primarily, traditional media started as news media, mainly to relay news. Then came entertainment. Then came recreation. In traditional media, all communication is one way. There's only one way communication happening, usually, right? Except for few exceptions, it's all one way communication. Radio channel will host a show. You are simply an audience listening to it, right? At the maximum, you can write a letter, you can make a phone call, but not every audience gets an option to reply, right? In newspaper as well, you can write a letter to the editor, and only some letters are published. Maybe 4 or 5 are published. They might get thousands. Not everyone gets a choice to explain their views. In television as well, right? They're broadcasting news. You have an opinion, you can call. Some of them have the calling option. You call, you communicate your view, but not every viewer gets the choice. So it is largely one way communication. The publisher, the broadcaster, they are communicating to you, relaying the news to you. You are simply receiving it. Usually traditional media is just one format. Television is just video and audio. Newspaper is only print and images. Radio is just audio. So the format of the content being carried is very limited. And more importantly, traditional media takes time in relaying the information. Is that clear? If, let's say, in the pre-television era, in the pre-television era, cricket match is happening in West Indies, right? In India, we'll get to know about this only 1.5 days later. The newspapers would pick up the information, publish this. Newspapers will reach the market. You go purchase it, then read the paper. By then, many hours would have passed. The match would have been over long back, right? So there is a huge delay in communication. Same with radio as well, right? To get information from around the world, it takes time to process the information, to make that into news and deliver that content. Then the content to reach you will take a lot of time. Even television, even live television for that matter, right? Even though live television provides for almost real-time communication, TV channels need to have a global network to cover everything that's happening around the world, which is more difficult to achieve. So there is a time lag in disseminating the information, in picking up information from one place and sending it to the audience. There is a time lag that is involved in your traditional media. Also, it is expensive to run, to maintain. Not everyone can own a TV channel or a newspaper, right? So in a way, the content creators were limited, and the audience was also limited. Newspaper is read by maybe few lakh people. Television is watched by maybe by few million people. Radio is heard by maybe few thousand people. So the audience is very limited in traditional media. The content creators, the publishers, the broadcasters are limited because not everyone can run a TV channel, a news channel, or a radio station. It requires a lot of capital. It's only big groups or institutions or companies or the government which can run these traditional media platforms. Like, for example, you and me, individually, we can't go start a newspaper. We can't go start a TV channel. We don't have that kind of money. Even if we start somehow, no one will listen or watch your news. So there are many limitations in traditional media. These were seen as drawbacks of traditional media. The slow information reaching in one format, no option to communicate back, no option to engage the community, right? And limited reach, high cost of operations. These were all seen as drawbacks of traditional media. But trust me, today, these are blessings, because the internet has changed everything. Social media has changed everything. It has brought tremendous advantages. It has brought real time communication, communication with mass audience, where your messages, your posts can go viral. Today, there are many startups, many companies built on the internet, built on social media, creating millions of jobs. Each individual can become a content creator. All you need is a mobile phone or basic internet, right? Anyone can become a publisher or content creator. So this is beautiful. This is tremendous, because internet has truly democratized information and communication. Social media has changed everything. It has given everybody a voice. But the same advantages of your internet and social media becomes extremely dangerous if it is misused, if it is in the wrong hands. That's why traditional media seems better. 90s kids will understand, right? We all have a nostalgia about the old television shows, what we used to listen on radio, right? The younger generation, maybe the Gen Z, they get bored with it. But trust me, the drawbacks were better, because there was a time lag involved. There was better fact checking before news was published. There was honesty involved in communicating news and information compared to now. Right now, what has happened with your new media, there is many to many communication. Everybody is a content creator. It's no longer the big publishers, broadcasters who control news. Everybody, right? Even a street vendor, even a college student, even a farmer, anybody can become a content creator, publishing news, publishing information. All you need is basic smartphone, basic even 2G internet connection, and basic literacy, how to operate these apps, right? And you're good to go. You take pictures, you write your posts, you shoot videos, go live, publish them. Immediately you have your audience. If you create the right kind of content, it will be picked up by the algorithms and allows for instantaneous communication with potential for going viral, where you can reach millions of audiences. Millions of people can be reached. So these are advantages as well. There is no doubt about it, right? The whole economy is built on it today. It's a content creators economy that we are living in. It has created millions of jobs, as I told you. It has democratized information and communication. But the same advantages become the biggest threats if it is in the wrong hand. If it is misused, because of the instantaneous nature and the mass scale that it reaches, the staggering reach that internet social media has, the real world impact will be much more severe. I'm not saying traditional media couldn't be misused. Even traditional media was being misused. For example, in newspapers, in television, fake news would be spread. It happens even today. In India, there are many political parties that run news channels, right? There are many big corporates who are aligned with few parties that sponsor news channels, correct? So there are propaganda articles planted in media to influence public opinion. Fake news is circulated, misinformation is circulated, even in TV, radio, in newspapers. Every newspaper has a certain ideology, right? They keep promoting their own ideology in every article. But the problem was, even though the misuse was happening, since it was not instantaneous with mass staggering reach, the impact was limited. When traditional media is misused, it's been happening for many decades and centuries. Even in medieval times, communication was being misused to spread fake news and propaganda. It's not a new thing, right? Fake news is not new. It's been there since time immemorial. Since humans started to lie, fake news has been there since then. But one thing was about traditional media, since it's a little slow, since not everyone can publish this, and since it has a limited reach, the impact of the misuse was less. You could contain the impact. In newspapers, paid news had become a menace. Election Commission has been tackling paid news. You would have read this in Polity, where political parties, politicians, they would sponsor newspapers, pay them. They would publish these advertisements disguised as news. They would have taken money for it. It's an ad. But the font, the design, everything looks like a newspaper article. They'll not distinguish it like an ad or mention that it's a sponsored ad. So readers will assume that it's a news article, they'll assume everything is true, and they would start believing in that leader and party. So these menaces were there in traditional media, but the impact was less. This paper may be read only by few lakh people. Doesn't make a difference. It does not manipulate elections. The problem comes up with your internet, with social media, where the reach is staggering, communication is instantaneous. You have two-way communication where everyone can express their opinion. Now, the moment you post something on Facebook or Instagram, right, you get hundreds of comments. Some people agree with you, some people criticize you, some start trolling you, some start threatening you as well. Right? We live in very interesting times where expressing opinion has become problematic. Is that clear? So, in such a society which is highly polarized, not just in India, around the world, we live in a polarized society where opinions have become intolerable. Ideally, in a healthy democracy, especially in the academic world, debate should be encouraged no matter whether you like it or not, whether you like someone's opinion or not. Any opinion should be encouraged. There should be a free, open debate without the fear of threats and being targeted. Today, it has become a real menace. Anything you say, right, on social media could generate a reaction, both positive and negative, starting from criticism to trolling, going all the way to threats, death and rape threats. This is what many content creators have already faced. Now, imagine if this powerful tool is in the wrong hands, if it is in the hands of terrorist groups, if it is misused by intelligence agencies of hostile foreign governments, if it is misused by political parties, if it is misused by private corporates or by your own government, it can have disastrous consequences for the society, for the country and the world, right? So there are many dangerous possibilities that exist with internet and social media. And that is what we'll be studying in this chapter. So let's see in what ways and forms can media be misused. That is what we'll first understand. Then I'll explain the real world consequences, what security challenges come up from it. So we'll take a quick look at this, and then I'll take some examples, some real examples from the real world, and discuss the threat posed by media and social media. Media platforms, both traditional and new media, they can be misused for propaganda. Propaganda is basically carrying false information, spreading exaggerated information, mainly to drive a political or a religious agenda. Let's say there is a party, it's contesting elections. This party wants to promote one leader. Now, as part of their communication strategy, they might deliberately exaggerate, over exaggerate the achievements of that leader. They'll keep spreading articles saying that this leader is the solution for all your problems. They will over exaggerate his actual achievements. They will spread false news about opponents. They'll spread false information about the leader himself or the party itself. So, when this is done on a sustained basis for a period of time, it can manipulate opinions. It can change the opinion of the public, right? Either for the positive or the negative. Understood? So, when such false information and exaggerated information is spread through a well planned, sustained campaign in order to drive a certain agenda, a political agenda, that is called propaganda. Understood? Then comes your rumor mongering. They're all related, they're all connected to each other. Rumor mongering is about spreading rumors, spreading completely fake news or fake information with the intention of triggering alarm or with the intention of grabbing attention. That's what rumors are, right? Rumors spread in the families as well, in companies, in your friend circle, right? There's everywhere there is a grapevine. If you go to any family event, right, you'll have your uncles, aunties sitting in one place spreading rumors about some other person. We all would have seen that, right? So rumors are about using a fake information with the intention of creating some kind of alarm, triggering everyone and getting attention to that particular issue where they are trying to use fake news for that, fake information for that. So this can be done very effectively on media platforms. Then comes your fake news, which is slightly different from rumors. Fake news is absolutely false information. It is not rooted in facts. You are misleading the audience by presenting the wrong facts to them, and based on the wrong facts you're creating a wrong opinion on that. So that becomes entirely fake news. Is that clear? Like, for example, a political party, or let's say a religious extremist organization, claiming that there is a threat to our religion, even if there is no threat in the real world, claiming that one community is a threat to us. This was extensively seen in Nazi Germany. The fascists, even left-wing extremists like Mao Zedong, Stalin, Lenin, they were all masters in propaganda, fake news, and rumor mongering. I explained under Naxalism, Naxals are very good in communication. Mao Zedong prioritized communication. It's one of the key strategies of Maoism, where they communicate with the intention of spreading propaganda, spreading rumors and fake news, right? So extremist organizations, political groups, hostile intelligence agencies, or some miscreants, they might deliberately use false information and wrong facts to present the wrong opinion and the wrong argument. All right? Then comes your paid news, which is basically advertisement disguised as news. This again misleads the audience. You would have seen on Instagram, right? All your influencers, celebrities, they post for many products. The honest ones, the ethical ones, right? They mention that it's paid sponsorship. Instagram has the feature to ensure that audience is not misled. Instagram and all social media platforms have added a feature where you can tag the post as paid sponsorship. It is prominently shown at the top. The moment you're looking at, you'll know that, okay, it's a paid ad. Imagine if it is not marked as an advertisement. You'll actually think it's a genuine news item or a genuine feedback or a review. So it can mislead the audience, like political parties or leaders sponsoring paid articles in newspapers, and these unethical newspapers publishing the ad as a news article. They'll use the same design, font, everything, just like other news articles. They'll embed it with other news articles. So when you're flipping the pages, right, you don't distinguish between ads and the paid news. Usually ads are separately designed. The moment you look at the paper, you get to know, okay, this is an advertisement. You know it is sponsored by someone. There's money behind it. Other news articles are different. The genuine news articles are in a different font, a different format. Now, if an ad is disguised as a news article, you are getting misled. They would have given a fake review. They would have targeted someone or exaggerated some achievement. If you read this as a news item, believing it's actual news, you will get misled as an audience. Correct? Let's say a new restaurant has opened. They have paid some influencers to provide a review. If that influencer does not mention that it is paid, you look at the video, you get enticed, you go and eat at that restaurant only to realize the food was shitty, right? So this is misleading the audience. It can happen in many different ways. When audience is not being communicated that this is an ad, it's a paid review or a paid article, right? This can mislead the audience, pushing them to make the wrong choices. It affects your choices, it affects your thinking. This entire process collectively is called social engineering. Engineering the minds of the society. Engineering the minds and choices of the society through manipulation is called social engineering. This is the end goal of propaganda, rumors, fake news, and paid news. Through a mix of these strategies, the final goal, the end game, is to achieve social engineering, to change your thought itself, to change your opinion on a particular issue or a subject, to change your preferences, your choices, and you don't even know you're being misled. You'll not even realize that it's happening to you. This is the power of media and especially social media. Is that clear? Through the right techniques, you can be pushed to vote for a party which you hated in the first place. It can be done. With the right propaganda campaign, which mixes rumors, fake news, and paid news, I can guarantee you that a party that you hate today, you will love that party few months later. You can be pushed to go out and vote for that party as well. Let's say a movie has released. You don't like that actor. You never want to watch this movie. With the right campaign, with social engineering, I can ensure as a producer, you will go and watch this movie. That is the power of media and social media. It changes your choices, your preferences, your thinking. When this is done on a mass scale, at a societal scale, on the scale of your country, at the scale of your world, where millions of choices are getting affected, this is social engineering. Now, this is tremendous power, right? And if it is used for the wrong reasons, it can have disastrous consequences. If your government is using this, or if your political parties are using it, if foreign hostile governments and intelligence agencies are using it, or radical groups, terror groups are using it, that represents a major threat to the society. Is that clear? It enables illegal activities as well. Today, on social media and on the internet, drugs, weapons, child pornography, all such illicit materials are being sold and trafficked with absolute ease. On social media platforms and by using the internet, especially a hidden part of the internet called the dark net. Today, there are criminals and cartels that are selling drugs, weapons, right? You can purchase almost everything that you want on the internet and social media. Even rocket and missile components are being trafficked. That is the scale of criminalization that you see on internet and social media. There are encrypted social media apps, encrypted games, which allows communication, secret communication, which is used for criminal activities. Right? Even without some digital sophistication, even without much technology, even ordinary miscreants can use it for illegal activities. For example, there was a case in Bangalore, a very hilarious case. A college student, a drug addict who consumes marijuana, he started growing marijuana in his house, in his pots. He takes a selfie, posts it on social media, asking anyone to buy it from him. And that's a rookie mistake he did, a very silly rookie mistake. But it got the attention of the police. They landed up the next day, arrested him, right? But it shows how easy it is to start selling anything you want on social media and the internet. If some college student can do that, imagine what sophisticated criminals with the right tech can do, right? If they have access to encrypted technologies, if they know how to use the dark net, the possibilities are endless for criminal activities. So all these concerns and threats exist on media, social media platforms. All right. The security threats that arise from the misuse is manipulation of elections. Democratic elections can be manipulated. As I told you, your political choice can be influenced. You can be influenced to hate a leader, to love a leader. You can be influenced to vote for a party, not vote for a party. Anything is possible through social engineering. It just requires the right propaganda campaign and the right targeting of the audience. And today, with technology, this is very easy, very simple, and, and very much possible. Even without you realizing that you are being engineered, your choices, your preferences would have been changed. All right, that's the worst part. It could happen to any one of us. Even if you're aware of all of this, still you can get influenced. That is the power of social engineering. The misuse can lead to rebellions and civil wars. Entire countries can be brought down, communities can be divided by carrying out polarization and increasing the social divisions. You can exploit the communal divide. You can exploit the ethnic divide, the linguistic divides, create conflicts between different communities, trigger mob unrest, mob violence, riots, causing uprising against the government, breed disaffection against the government to the point where the masses will rise up and take up a revolutionary armed movement against the government itself to topple the government. So rebellions, civil wars, riots and mobs and polarization is very much possible. It has already happened in many, many countries. Extremist groups, terror groups, extremist organizations, for them it's a blessing. It's a blessing for their propaganda. Remember, we studied about Islamic State, ISIS. I told you how they have effectively used social media, apps like Telegram, basic apps like Telegram, Facebook, etc., to spread their radical ideology and even get recruits from around the world. It can become a breeding ground of radicalism and extremism. And the worst part about social media is that they're all based on an algorithm, right? There is a complex algorithm that's driving the app. These algorithms, they are designed to track your preferences, to track your location, your identity, your activities, etc. By using this data, the algorithm will push your preferred content, because the goal of any social media company is to keep you engaged as much as possible. I don't know how many of you know this. If there are any engineers, they would know, but others may not be aware of it. All the social media companies, they use a key metric to track their performance. Can you guess what it is? Be it Google, Apple, Microsoft, Netflix, any app, any tech-based app, they use one critical metric to track their success. I'm not asking which data they are tracking from you. They are using one metric regarding their users, which determines their success, the company's success. Kumari is the only one who has given the right answer. And even Ravi. It is your hours of engagement. How many hours, how many minutes per day are you spending your time on that screen? Instagram, for example, it is logging data. Yes, it is recording your location, your voice, your video. Apart from all of that, one prime metric they track is what is your engagement time? How many minutes are you spending on the app? How many hours? It's not minutes, I'm sure. For every one of us, including me, it is many hours a day. That is how addictive social media is. The algorithm is designed to keep pushing the content you like. Let's say you finish your college, you hear about UPSC and IAS exams, you Google IAS exams, or you watch one topper's video. Immediately, the content gets diverted. All other videos that you were seeing before gets reduced. Only such content, UPSC content, keeps coming up, and your feed, your wall gets loaded with this content. So since you like this, your interest keeps developing over a period of time. And as you watch more, you are pushed more such content itself. It keeps you in a bubble. The more you watch something, the more the similar content is pushed to you, and it becomes addictive. It becomes like a dopamine hit, right? You get that gratification every time you watch, especially with reels and the shorter formats. It's as addictive as sugar, sex, and even nicotine, drugs. The dopamine hit you get with social media is as addictive as that. So the more you watch something, algorithm keeps pushing that content, creating a bubble for you. You lose sense of what is real, what is not. You forget that there's something real world outside there. What I'm saying is that you get locked in this bubble of your own. You create a virtual world of yourself. The algorithm is doing that for you just to drive your engagement time. Today, if you spend 2 hours on the app, tomorrow the app wants you to be there for 2.5 hours. They'll push more such content to keep you engaged, to keep giving you the dopamine hit. And the more you engage, the more such content keeps coming, creating that virtual bubble world for you. Right? You think this is the entire world. Now, let's say you never wanted to give UPSC exams. All right, you somewhere heard about it. Your uncle was suggesting you should become an IAS. You just read about it. Some content started coming over a period of time. It fills your world, that becomes your virtual bubble. And someone who never wanted to attempt a government exam tomorrow might be pushed to attempt the exam. It changes your career choice itself. If it happens for the good, well and fine. But what if this is harmful to you? What if it's leading to other harmful threats to the society itself? Imagine someone who's a little extreme in their political thoughts or their religious thoughts. So they will like some political agenda videos, religious propaganda videos. Same content keeps coming to them. Over few months, they are in a bubble. They're filled with all propaganda material. Their whole world is about propaganda. Everywhere they look, they're seeing the same, that their religion is under threat, that this political party is extremely corrupt, right? They get filled with the propaganda, making the wrong choices from there on, which pushes them to even more radicalism and extremism. Is that clear? This is a proven fact. And this is the threat by social media. All right? It enables organized criminal activities, as I was mentioning, from selling weapons to drugs to child pornography, right? Committing cyber crimes, committing money laundering, carrying out illegal financial transactions. Everything can be done on the internet and on the tech platforms that you have today, right? Even though they're all advantageous, they have tremendous economic advantages. At the same time, they represent the biggest risk to our society. Is that clear? And now with the emergence of AI, we have entered the next step, right? We are already in the fourth stage of industrial revolution, which is powered by AI and critical emerging technologies. So these technologies, from robotics to neural networks, machine learning, Internet of Things, right? They can do wonders, but they raise the risk as well. Today, you can create deep fakes which look so authentic, you can't even distinguish them sometimes. For example, an entire article can be written, a very good scholarly research article can be written by using an AI algorithm, right? I'm sure all of you would have tried Chat GPT and other variants that have propped up. You can create completely false images which doesn't even exist in the real world. You can create videos, articles which are entirely fake. It's not written by you, but the algorithm is creating it for you, right? The problem with AI tools is that they are all driven by the data on which they are fed with. AI is like an organism, it's like an animal which is being fed. If animals eat food, AI algorithms eat data. They consume data. They learn from data. Their learning happens through the data which is fed to them. But this data which we are feeding, it's coming from the real world, from real users like us. And all the biases that we have, the political bias, racial bias, religious bias, right, that gets logged into the data, into the digital world. And this biased data is feeding the algorithms. So all the social biases that exist on religious lines, communal lines, caste and ethnic lines, they're getting fed into the systems, leading to biased algorithms. If decision making tomorrow is based on AI algorithms, then you'll end up making all the wrong decisions, right? The deep fakes have increased the risk to the next level. Today, you can create a video, right, which looks exactly like a leader or a celebrity. You can mimic their facial actions, their voice, everything can be mimicked to send out dangerous, wrong messages. Imagine a government leader's fake video where he's urging for riots to happen. Imagine what will happen. The blind followers might actually believe it's a genuine video. So deep fakes pose the next level of threat, which points out how dangerous new media can be. Right? So this is the focus of this chapter. This is the introduction, the basic concepts which we have covered. Based on this, we'll discuss some real cases and what can be done, what measures need to be taken to counter the threat. All right. So I think we are almost at the end of the session. So let's stop over here. Let's wrap up the class. We can resume this tomorrow, Saturday. Tomorrow, don't forget, 5 to 8:30. We will continue with the discussion. We have an extra class tomorrow. Not an extra class, just a replacement for the first class that we lost. So come back at 5 p.m. without fail. We'll continue this. We'll complete this chapter and look at cybersecurity as well. I hope it was a good session. I hope you guys have understood everything. Let me know how it went. I'll look at the comments later. Continue from here. Any further doubts, let me know. I'll pick it up tomorrow. So that's it.